So welcome What If Usagi x Guardians Naruto x Bunny movie. The glares they're even worse somehow. Sakura-chan hates me because I didn't bring back her Sasuke-kun. Kakashi-sensei does everything he can to stay away from me. He doesn't say anything but I know he hates me too for losing his prize student. The rest of the rookie 9 are avoiding me as well. What else can possibly go wrong? Damn it, I had to jinx it, didn't I? I stood there watching the villagers burn down my apartment with silent tears running down my face. I slightly turn around but something catches my eye. There's Sakura and Kakashi standing there with the crowd cheering for a job well done on destroying the demon's home, I hear them say. Finally having enough, I turn around and silently walk to the main gates of the village. With tears running down my face, I silently make past the guards. I guess all those years of doing pranks were really good for something instead of just fun. After I'm a good distance from the village, I dash into a sprint using my chakra to carry myself faster, and after about 10 hours of running on my chakra and kyubis, I find myself in the middle of wind country in a big desert. Bits of sweat falling on the sand, I decode to take off my orange jacket and sit and rest for a bit. Letting my mind wander, I find myself again thinking about how everything got turned upside down. Why? I did my best, right? I fought with everything I had, but he still got away. I did my best, so why is that so hard for them to understand? I know I tried. Yes, you did, kid, but you must remember humans are foolish creatures. I know, but I just wish that they didn't see me as you and just as me. Sorry this had to happen to you because of me. If only if I didn't fall for Orochimaru's genjutsu and attack the village, you wouldn't be in this mess you're in. I know it isn't your fault, it was the Hubiteme fault, Q-chan, so let it get you down. I know, kid, I know. Kyubi pauses for a brief second and I hear her taking a deep breath as well as a massive killer intent. Now what have I told you about calling me that? It's either Kyubi-sama or Kyubi-hime. Kyubi shouted at me, giving me a massive headache. Yeah, whatever you say, Fuzzy. I say out loud, earning another headache from the bipolar Kyubi. Then I hear Kyubi stop her mindless rant and tense. Oi Q, what's wrong? Getting tired already at your old age, I told her, smirking. No, you mindless monkey, somebody or something is approaching at a fast pace and it will be here at any second, the so-called great Kyubi yelled at me. I stop what I was about to say, I pull out a kunai preparing for an attack. In a matter of seconds my possible enemy comes into view. I noticed that the thing appearing was not a ninja or human, at that it was a fox. A yellow fox with pointy ears, those were white at the tip. Blue eyes that were the same blue as mine, but they were more fox-like with blue zigzag lines under its eyes. The fox has what appeared to be blue sleeves with a yin-yang symbol on the sides of both them. It had comma-like markings on the front of its thighs. Her feet or paws, I don't care, were white. To finish it all off, she had a long yellow tail with the tip of it white. The yellow fox appears in front of me and we glare at each other for what felt like hours, when it spoke. Naruto. The fox spoke, earning a yell along the lines of, I can't believe it just talked to me. As I was saying, my name is Renamon and I'm a Digimon, the fox known as Renamon spoke to me. Digimon, what the hell is that, and how the hell do you know my name? I yelled at her, causing her to flinch slightly at the sounds of my voice. I'll tell you as long as you keep your voice down, she said in a calm, deadly way that causes me to nod my head at her rapidly. Now then, a Digimon is better known as a digital monster. I come from a place known as the digital world. It's in a parallel universe to this one. Why I am here is to give you these two things, she says, handing me a rectangular orange and white device that has 3 rectangular buttons on a white circle with a green screen at the top. Think of Masaru Daimon's Digivice I see from Digimon Savers. Then she hands me a yellow tag with an orange crest that has what looks like a sun engraved in it, with a smaller sun in the middle with 3 lines on the left side of the outer sun. I look at her for about a few minutes thinking over my next words carefully, then I ask her. What the hell are these? I said bluntly and rudely, not that I cared or noticed. This is called a Digivice IC. It helps your partner Digimon digivolve with the help of your inner energy. The tag and crest you got is symbol of your most known characteristic that also help us digivolve further when you tap into that energy. The symbol that is on the crest is the spirit symbol, meaning you're the chosen child of spirit, she says calmly, but I was able to catch a little irritation in her voice. So you say partner Digimon? She nods and I continue. So who's my partner Digimon? I say with excitement in my voice jumping up and down, but then I stop as soon as I start. Why? You may ask, maybe because of that death glare she is giving me and saying things along the lines of, why do I have to be partner with an idiot, and hearing Kyubi agree with her. She then stops her rant and glare at me with enough killer intent it could rival Kyubi's. I am your partner Digimon, you blonde fool, she says to me calmly, looking at me with a look that says, I dare you to say anything. Now we must leave, we wasted enough time as it is, the guardians won't wait forever, she says, walking a few steps ahead of me. Wait, what do you mean leave? Why do we have to leave? I yelled, waving my arms around in a panic. We have to leave now, everything will be explained when we get there, Renamon says calmly while shaking her head while lifting her arms right in front of her palms touching each other and spreads them out opening a portal. She turns to me then turns back to the portal stepping through. Kyuubi, what should I do? Go with her, the Guardians never call anyone unless it's important. How would you know this? I should, cause I used to be a Guardian before I attacked Konoha. What really? Not so loud, you little monkey. Okay fine, but if I die I'm so going to be pissed. With that I ran through the portal after Renamon and left the shinobi world and appeared in the Guardian's domain. Point of view change. Normal, the village been in chaos since the day Naruto left. All who burnt down the home of one Naruto Uzumaki was executed on the spot by one pissed off Godem Hokage. She ordered all available shinobi to search for him. All of his friends were heartbroken to know that their loud-mouthed friend left the village and regretted avoiding him because of their parents. Sakura was happy that he was gone until the rest of her friends told her off about how stupid she was being. Soon after, she too was feeling the after effects of his departure and slowly went into depression. Kakashi too was feeling horrible, but he was slowly coming to reality to what he had done to his sensei's son who he was told to take care of. He would go on searches every day for his blonde-hair student who looked so much like his father. But there was 3 people who were affected the most: Hinata Hyuga, Iruka Amino, and one Godem Hokage Tsunade. This had one negative effect on them: instead of being nice kind-hearted people they turn into cold people. Hinata spent most of her time training. She reached new heights in the Hyuga taijutsu style, the Juken. At first her father was proud of her with her development, but that soon turned to sorrow as she returned home every day with bloody palms. She never shows his emotion on her face anymore, but if one were to look deep inside of her they would see a crying girl. Iruka stopped working at the academy saying, "Why should I teach the children of those who treated my brother like shit?" and left the village with the permission of the Hokage to teach at Tsuna. Tsunade turned from a nice woman with a terrible attitude to a cold woman with a terrible attitude. She executed 50 villagers for their crimes against a Konoha shinobi. Disbanded the village council, executed Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu for attempting assassination on a Hokage. Killed anybody who talked wrong about her little brother. The villagers and shinobi never mentioned Naruto Uzumaki in front of her again after one brave fool was foolish enough to ask why she cared for the demon so much. Let's just say he killed himself because he would never truly be a man again after what she'd done to him. She then called for a whole village meeting to really make them regret for treating her brother like shit. She told everyone about the fox being in Naruto that caused lots of gasp from the younger generation who never knew. She then told them about why he was chosen as the fox's jailer. She told them how the fourth wanted his son to be treated as a hero because there was no way that he was going to sacrifice anybody else's child when he had one himself. To put the icing on the cake, she questioned their loyalty to the fourth, saying that if you really believed in the fourth Hokage like you said you did, so why did you doubt his abilities as a Hokage and his mastery of seals? You all make me sick. After she finished her speech everybody was speechless. They had no idea what they'd done, but they knew that they would get a chance to apologize to the blonde hyperactive kid one day, they hoped. Scene change. Sailor Moon universe point of view change. Usagi Sakino. I can't take this anymore. They're supposed to be my friends and they turn on me and kick me out of being leader of the Senshi. My love left me saying that he can't love a klutz like me and that I'm too childish. So I act childish sometimes. Okay, maybe all the time, but how else am I supposed to stay sane in this crazy world we live in? Any normal person would have cracked a long time ago. So instead of going crazy I act childish and try to make my friends laugh at me so they won't go insane with having to deal with all the Yoma we have to fight. Well, at least we're done and we won't have to deal with the chaos any longer. Maybe it is good they kicked me out, at least I won't have to go to any more stupid meetings and deal with Mamoru any longer. I never really liked him, I'm more into women, I thought with a slight perverted giggle at the end. The chaos is not done yet, says a feminine childlike voice. What do you mean? The chaos is not done yet, I defeated it myself 3 months ago. But that was only taste of the true chaos to come, the voice said, and I can feel its glare on me. But I don't want to fight anymore and I'm alone now, I say in a whisper. You will have your help with 6 others, you won't be alone. Fine, but first show me and tell me who you are. Certainly, purred the voice. When it steps out into the light I see that it's cat. Figures, I say with a bitter laugh. The cat wasn't like any cat I ever seen. It was a white cat that was standing on 2 legs. A long white tail with blue stripes, and it had a golden tail ring. Blue eyes the same shade of mine that held a lot of kindness in them. She also had green gloves on her hand with tiger stripes on them, carrying a device, and had a tag around her neck. My name is Gatomon and I'm your partner Digimon. Here you'll need these. What you now have in your hand is your Digivice IC and your crest of purity. If have any questions please ask them when we get back to the Guardian's dimension, she explains, then opens a portal and steps through. I look down at my pink and white digivice and the black crest in my hand. It has a symbol of a star surrounded by a white flame. Shaking my head and stepping through the portal, I can't help but get the feeling I was being watched. Oh well, let's just hope I don't have to fight any more weird monsters. I thought, scared that I may have to fight some weird slimly monster. Point of view change. Hotaru. Be careful princess, I'll take care of everything while you're gone. Never thought would happen when I followed Usagi-chan to make sure she was okay. After what the inner senshi said about her, I knew she was listening, just couldn't say anything. She had to find out sooner or later. Just wished it wasn't like that. Farewell princess, I'll always stand by your side, I thought to myself while walking home to go to sleep for the night. I wonder what everybody is going to do when they find out Usagi is not here any longer. Probably going to end up in chaos. Point of view change. Normal. The day after Usagi left, the senshi went to find her to tell her that she was suited enough to be their leader anymore. When they couldn't find her, they started to panic, searching high and low to search for their lost princess. They told Usagi's parents and they called the police, and they couldn't find her anywhere. The senshi were worried over Usagi and hoping she was okay. When Mamoru found out, he was devastated. Sure, he didn't love her anymore, but he still cared for her safety. Amy brought up the situation, thinking that, what if Usagi was listening when we were talking about kicking her out the senshi the other day? Now that she thought about it, Rei did feel Usagi's presence the other day when they were talking. When she told the others that, they were shocked that she never told them. Amy searched on her computer to see if Usagi was anywhere in the city. Rei scried the sacred fire to search. When they both came up with nothing, they searched by other means. They all wanted to see Usagi again to apologize for what they said the other day. But they wouldn't get that chance until about 4 years when she appeared again. Scene change. Guardian domain. Point of view change. Naruto. When I stepped through the portal, I didn't expect to see someone else step through another portal right next to me. I turn to my right and see a girl a couple years older than me. She has blonde hair done in an Odango style. Blue eyes that look exactly like mine's. She's wearing a white and black school uniform with a locket placed in the middle of her black ribbon. Black school shoes. Yep, she's weird. Hi, she says in a happy tone that snaps me out of my thoughts. Oh hee hi, I say, rubbing the back of my head in embarrassment. So how did you get here? The same way you did, I replied with a deadpan look on my face. I see you have a Digimon too then, she says, pointing to Renamon and her cat-like thing that's standing on 2 legs with gloves on its hand. 2? I asked, staring at the cat. Yep, mine's Gatomon, and she gave me a couple of things. Something called a Digivice I see, and gave me a crest called Purity, she said, showing me her crest and Digivice. Yeah, I got one too, but mine is called the Crest of Spirit, I said, showing her mine's as well. She folds her arms and looks like she's in deep thought. So I guess you must be my partner. Gatomon was talking. So where are the others then? She said, rubbing her chin in deep concentration. Others? What others? I yelled, causing the others to stop what they were doing and look at me. I look at the others, blush and look away so they wouldn't see it. But that wasn't the case, because one person did see, and she was currently on the ground laughing her ass off. Ha 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 ha, you're funny and you're pretty cute when you blush, kid, said the girl standing up, still laughing. I blush at the cute comment, but scowl at the kid comment. Hey, I'm no kid, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the future Hokage and Konoha's greatest ninja ever, I boasted, and she looks at me, then goes into another fit of laughter, this time only harder and louder. It seems nothing keep you down for long, does it, Gaki? Says a voice I know all too well. I turn around and come face to face with my perverted sensei Jiraiya. Wearing his trademark forehead protector with the kanji of oil on it. His long spiky white hair, black eyes with red stripes under them. He also still has on everything else since the first day I met him. His red vest over his green samurai-type clothes and fishnet shirt. Fishnet pants underneath his garb with his trademark red samurai sandals. What the hell are you doing here, Ero Sennin? I yelled, pointing at him. What did I tell you about calling me that, baka? He yelled back, knocking me on my head with his fist. Grandpa Jiraiya, why are you here? Says the forgotten girl with a clueless look on her face. Huh? He turns and looks at the girl and gets a bright smile on his face. Hey Usagi-chan, how you been? Says Ero Sennin, hugging the girl that I know as Usagi. Fine, Grandpa, but why are you here? She asks again. Wait, Grandpa? I didn't think any women would get with you, Ero Sennin, I said with a big sweat drop on my head, thinking about what kind of women would date this perverted guy. I'll have you know, all the ladies will kill just to get a chance to be with me, he explains, proudly puffing out his chance, but I ignore him and just talk to Renamon until he got done with his women rant. Then I hear him mumble something along the lines of, disrespectful little runt. Turning away from Renamon and about to get into another argument with Ero Sennin, a voice stops us from proceeding. Father, now is not the time for this. We must tell them now so they can go get the others so they can prepare themselves for the ultimate chaos that is to come, says an angelic voice that sounds so familiar to me. I turn and face her. She has the same hairstyle as Usagi, but her hair is silver. Silver eyes that holds nothing but kindness and wisdom behind them. She has a golden crescent moon shining brightly on her forehead. Dressed in a white dress with a golden crescent moon symbol on the top of her dress. In her hands she holds a silver staff with a silver crescent moon on the top of it. She turns and faces me and gives me one of the few warm smiles I ever had in my life. But what she says next shocks me though. "It is good to see you again, my son," she says with the warm smile still on her lips. "Son, son," shouted Usagi, and I with Kyuubi in my mind. "I thought I was your only child," says Usagi with confusion clearly in her voice. I look at her and then the woman who calls herself my mother. "But I don't have any parents. I've been alone for as long as I could remember, and trust me, I can remember everything," I say a little bitterly, clearly thinking of the past. "How can you remember everything?" I hear Usagi ask me. "Photographic memory, so I remember everything including faces, jutsus, hand signs, and just about every little detail of my life," I say looking down at the ground. "What are?" She never got to ask because her mother interrupted her. "You may ask him later, Usagi. You will have the time now. I want you both to gaze into the crescent moon on my forehead so I may show you what you have forgotten," she told us both calmly. We do as she says, and then memories of my past life fill into my head. But one particular memory catches my attention. Scene change. Naruto's memory. I was walking down the palace halls looking for my sister cuz mother wanted to see her for an important matter concerning the Prince of Earth. I take my walk through the lunar garden when I saw her. The white lunar flowers surrounded her. Her raven black hair tied up into a bun, she had a few bangs covering her face and eyes. Her eyes were a pale green, indicating that she was blind, but I knew she felt my presence. She was dressed in a black and green kimono with the symbol of Earth on her right arm. The funny thing about her was that she had on no kind of shoes. She had a peaceful smile on her face that I instantly fell in love with. "I know you're there. Just because I'm blind doesn't mean I can't see," she says with the smile never leaving her face. "Sorry, I didn't mean to stare. It's just that I did not expect anybody to be in our private gardens," I told her walking towards her. "But I'm curious, how did you know I was there?" I asked sitting down next to her in the garden. "I can feel the vibrations in the ground. I heard you coming from a mile away," she said lying down on her back folding her hands behind her head. I look at her with awestruck appearance on my face because I never heard of anybody who can do that. So I ask her about how she's able to do that. She smiles at the question and replies with, "I don't know, I guess you can say that Gaia herself has blessed me with the gift of sight. To view things the way she sees it herself," she says with a soft smile on her face. I smile as along with her. We sit there for about 10 minutes before she gets up to take her leave. Forgetting that I didn't get her name, I called after her. "Hey, wait, yes, what is it?" she said with little irritation in her voice. "It's just that I never learn your name. Shouldn't a gentleman introduce himself before asking a lady for hers first?" she said with a little playful smile on her lips. "Sorry about that. My name is Naruto, Prince of the Moon," I said, taking her hand and pressing my lips to her hand softly. I look up at her face and I see that she's blushing a shade of red that could compete with a tomato. "My name is Toph, Princess of the Earth," she says, continuing to blush with a little stutter that makes her sound and look all that much cuter. "Sorry, but I have to go now. Hope to see you again, Naruto-kun," she says, walking off at a quick pace. "Hope to see you again too, Toph-chan," I yelled at her, making her turn around and giving me a warm smile before heading off. I stand there for about 5 minutes before I finally remember about finding my sister for mother. Mom's probably going to make me spend time with Grandpa for making her wait for so long, I thought, breaking off in a sprint because I do not like spending time with the self-proclaimed super pervert. Naruto memory end. Scene change. Guardian Lair. "So you are my mother. The Odango girl to my right is my sister, and Ero Sennin is my perverted grandfather." I said it as more a statement than a question, but I got a nod from my mother and 2 scowls from my sister and grandfather. "What, it's not like you're not perverted, Ero Sennin, and you do have an Odango hairstyle, Usagi Nichan," I told them, waving my hands in front of me, backing up into one of the stone walls, and that was all that Ero Sennin needed. He walked over, then hit me over my head with a chakra-enhanced fist. Deciding for a little payback, I prepare the one attack I know that I can beat him with. "So you want to play, Ero Sennin? Let's play then, Kage Bushin no Jutsu," I shouted, putting my hands in the correct seal and forming 10 clones. "You really think a move like that can beat me?" he says in a mocking manner, but I just smile, my trademark fox smile. "Henge." The clones and I shouted, disappearing in a puff of white smoke. When the smoke's clear, I yell out, "Harem no Jutsu." In our place where 11 blonde pigtailed girls with blue eyes. Whisker marks adoring our tan faces. Huge busts, a nicely shaped body that has the curves in all the right places, and our private areas covered by a cloud of white smoke. The effect was immediate. Ero Sennin passed out with a major nosebleed, and something unexpected happened, so did Usagi Nichan. I transformed back and turned to face my mother, who was looking at me with her smile on her face, but the amount of killer intent that she was giving off was enough for Kyubi to stop laughing and retract into the deepest part of his cage. "Sorry, mother," I said, quickly scratching the back of my head. "I never expected Usagi Nichan to pass out along with Ero Sennin." "Oh well, I guess you never know who's a pervert," I said, trying to lighten the mood. I looked back just in time to catch a tail to the face courtesy of Gatamon, sending me flying back into a wall. I try to get out, but everything gets dark after a while. Point of view change. Usagi time skip, 15 minutes. Stupid brother. Stupid perverted technique. But I have to say it was a good one. But the only down thing about is that he found out I'm a pervert and I have an attraction to other women, damn it. I thought, looking at my Nichan with a glare hard enough that if it could kill he'd be dead. Shaking my head of my thoughts and the many ways I could possibly get payback on my brother, I see mother talking. "Now that is over, I going to tell you about why you're here, and now no eruptions while I'm talking. A few months ago Sailor Moon, or Usagi, and her Sailor Senshi defeated the chaos." "That's not entirely true, you only defeated a small army of the true chaos that is to come. The only way to defeat the chaos is for you to gather the other guardians. Usagi and Naruto, you two are two of the new guardians. Each guardian has their own Digimon partner and crest. I sent 7 guardians in all, and they all to different universes many years ago during the Silver Millennium. It is your job to bring them together, and when you do you will all go on training trip for 1,000 years, which will only be 4 years in your worlds. Before you ask, I am able to manipulate time so your worlds will move slower than the worlds you will go to. The guardians have a special energy that enables you to age slower than normal people. Just at me, I still look like I'm 30, but I'm over 5,000 years old. So don't worry about aging. Now what Jiraiya and I are going to do is send you and your Digimon to a digital world, and you will spend 8 months there getting to know your Digimon and learning how to use your Digivices. 9 months in the digital world will be like 5 minutes here in this world. Now prepare yourselves for your trip," she finished and walks away down to who know where. "Did you get all that, Nichan?" I asked Naruto, facing him. I see that he's just as overloaded with this information as I am. I stood there with an amused grin on my face, watching him hold his head over how much information we were told. "Yeah, I did, but it is a little much to take in, Nichan." "Yes, it is, but we should probably get going now." I looked around, tried to find where my grandfather went to. I find him sitting down on the ground looking through a couple of scrolls. "Grandpa, where ready go?" I yelled out at him. He nods his head and walks over to us and hands both Naruto and I a different scroll. "While you're in the digital world, I want you two to practice jutsus and train there. Don't let just your Digimon get stronger, you two as well must grow while you're there. Naruto, in your scroll there are many 4 futon jutsus, 5 Suiden jutsus, 6 Kaiden jutsus, and a few chakra control exercises I want done before you come back." He stops to make sure Naruto got everything he said, and with a "Hi Ero Sennin" and a bop on the head later he came to me. "Usagi, what you have here is the basics of chakra control and a few low-level jutsus. When you get enough chakra control, have Naruto teach you the Kage Bushin, and that will help you with your training. It learns anything you do. Watch this. Naruto, come here for a second." Grandpa shouted towards Naruto. He walked over and he told Naruto to make a Kage Bushin. He did, and so did Grandpa. He told them both to go out of the room and play a game of Janken. When they were done, he told Naruto to dispel his clone and tell him what happened. "You cheated, that's what happened, trying to change your hand at the last second. Wait how I know that I was in her the whole time," Naruto shouted. "That's the secret of the Kage Bushin, whatever it learns you do. Let's say if you created 1,000 Kage Bushin and you made them do the tree climbing exercise while you yourself did taijutsu training, you could get 2 things done at once, and you get a whole year's worth of chakra control training. Just remember, do no use this training all the time, it could cause major blackouts and you get less training done. Also, what you should remember is that you can't get any physical training done with this training method because the Kage Bushin is made out of chakra. Oh, here is another scroll. Usagi, this is a taijutsu style known as the Goken. I think you'll like it. Naruto, you train with her because your brawler style of fighting will get you killed one day. Now stand back while I open the portal to the digital world, and when 9 months has went by your Digimon will open the portal back here, then you will head off to another one of the guardians." With that he opened the portal into the digital world and we stepped through with Gatamon and Renamon right behind us. Scene change. Digital world wasteland area. "This is going to be an interesting 9 months, Naruto said with excitement purely in his voice. "Well, we better get started. I hope we don't run into anything too dangerous in here," I said, taking my first step in this wasteland that is known as the digital world. Scene change. Guardian lair time skip, 5 minutes. Point of view change. Naruto, it's been 9 months since we last seen this place, and Renamon and I have gotten a whole lot stronger. I've learned all what Ero Sennin told me to learn on the scrolls. I had Kyuubi place some gravity seals on me and Usagi Nichan since the stupid pervert never gave us any for our training for the Goken, which requires a lot of speed. I'm currently on 5 times normal gravity and Usagi 3 times. Renamon and Gatomon had some placed on them as well, and they're both currently at 10 times since Digimon can handle more stuff than we can. Renamon and I has also gotten closer over our time in the digital world. We reach many new levels of power while there. We have only recently reached her mega level in power after I had gotten the Digivice IC upgraded to the Digivice Burst. Usagi and Gatomon are on equal power as us, and she also had hers upgraded. Mine is now orange and black with hers pink and black, so we can handle anything any Digimon throw our way. Renamon can currently defeat a champion level Digimon in her rookie form and has to evolve for anything higher, but we're working on that. Since Gatomon is always in her champion form, she could delete any champion level without any trouble, but when it comes to ultimate level Digimon she always has a little trouble. Usagi Nichan and I have gotten the basics down for the Goken style, and we're pretty much far from mastering it, and we're only capable of doing the Omid Renge as of right now. That moves put a real strain on the body, but since Usagi and our guardians, our healing rates are faster than normal, so we could continuously use the move without getting hurt. Now here we are walking through the portal and entering the guardian's domain again. I see Ero Sennin is there holding a pair of clothes for the both of us. He walks over and hands me a black and orange jacket with a black undershirt. The jacket has the crest of spirits in orange on its right arm with my ever-loving red Konoha spiral on the back. He hands me a pair of black pants and black. Then he hands me a black cloth to replace my old blue cloth on my forehead protector because it had many holes in it from our training in the digital world. He hands Usagi Nichan a white shirt with a black trenchcoats that reminds me of Anko Sensei's from the Chunin exam, with the crest of purity on her right arm and a crescent moon on the back of the coat. He also hands her of matching black pants and ninja sandals. I look at him for a second before walking off to go change. Point of view change. Usagi. After I got change into my new clothes, I walked back out to see Naruto with Renamon and Gatomon already waiting. I look at Naruto wearing his new clothes with his forehead protector tied around his waist like a belt, letting his wild blonde hair fall over his eyes. His tag and crest hanging safely around his neck like mine, with his Digivice clipped to his waist. I look at my Digivice in my hand, clip it to my weights as well, and we wait for Grandpa to arrive with the thing we'll need for the trip he said he was going to go get. I see him walking back into the chamber room where we met it earlier with a pair of black bags and a scroll. He hands me the scroll and I ask him what's on it. This is your destination and the guardian you need to bring back with you. He tells us. I open the scroll and read its contents. Name: Takato Matsuda Digimon. Guilmon Crest. The Crest of Chaos. Current location: Shinjuku Alternate Japan. Current team: Ruki Makino, Digimon Partner; Renamon, Genria Lee, Digimon Partner; Terriermon. Farthest Digivolution: Gallantmon. Mega Level Digimon and Mode Change: Crimson Mode. Note: Digimon Partner can only get to his Mega form when biomerged with Partner. Side note: once made Partner digivolve into a corrupt Mega Level form Megidramon. Past life: he was Prince Takato of Mars, brother to the Princess of Mars Ray. Okay, you know what you have to do, and I gave you both information in your scrolls about how to seal and unseal stuff from your storage scrolls, so get a move on. Grandpa tells us before our Digimon open the portal to where we find our next guardian, Takato Matsuda. The guardians and their Digimon step out of their portal right into the middle of Shinjuku Park. Since it was midnight and no normal person would be out at this time of night, the coast was clear, or so they thought. There was one person up that night, and by person I mean Digimon by the name of Impmon. He was walking through the night like he does every night, and he just happens to be there when the portal opened up. He watches curiously as 4 figures stepped out, 2 humans and 2 Digimon. Impmon lean in a little closer to hear what they were saying. Usagi, how about we split up to find out where he lives, since the information that Ero Sennin gave us had no information on that, the blonde boy said. Alright, I will go this way and you go that way, Naruto, Usagi said, pointing her finger in the directions of north where she will be searching and south where Naruto will begin his search. Okay, and we'll meet back here in 3 hours, got it? He said, meeting his gaze with hers. She nods her head and takes off with Gatomon lying on her bag. When she gets out of sight, Naruto turned to the bushes where he felt a presence. He looks at Renamon and nods his head slightly, indicating that she could search. She vanishes and reappears in the bushes to find no one there. She walks out and tells him that she found nothing. Nodding his head, he takes off using his ninja-enhanced speed to dash out the park with Renamon right behind him. With Usagi, when Impmon saw the girl leave, he decides to follow her and confront her. He rushes up ahead in front of her and jumps out the bushes, making her jump in fright. Snickering at how easily he frightens her, he walks up to her with a smirk on his face, but before he could actually reach her, Gatomon appears in front of him. What do you want, Imp? Gatomon says, licking her claws, eyeing Impmon carefully. Usagi stands there looking at Impmon like he is like some sort of new discovery. I want to why you're here, catgirl. Impmon replies with the smirk still on his face. His green eyes glaring into Gatomon blue ones. Usagi, deciding that she had enough, decided to speak up. We're looking for someone named Matsuda Takato, you've heard of him? Usagi said, earning a slight flicker of emotion to cross the smirking face of Impmon. Yeah, and what if I do know him? Then what? It's not like I'll tell ya. Impmon tells them, summoning a fireball on the tip of his finger. You will tell me where he is, we need to speak with him, Gatomon demanded, slapping the fireball out of his hands. Impmon, not liking this, summoned more fireballs and threw at Gatomon, who swiftly dodged each one. Usagi, not the one to like fighting, decided to intervene. Now there's no reason to fight, we just want to talk to the kid, so why don't you be a nice Digimon and show us where he stays, Usagi said sweetly, earning a snort from Impmon before Gatomon started rushing him slowly, then picking up pace, calling her attack. Lighting paw, she shouted, punching Impmon square in the gut, making him fly back into a tree. Had it coming to him, she mumbled to herself, licking her paws. Now why don't you tell us what we want to know and we will take our leave, she finished saying, turning her full attention to the struggling Impmon attempting to stand using the tree for support. Sorry, ain't going to happen, tuts, I'm going to delete ya right here, Impmon yelled before he was surrounded by Data, and his place was one of the 7 demon lords. Beelzebumon, he shouted, holding both of his Baranina shotguns in his hands, pointing them at Gatomon, who stopped in her tracks, staring wide-eyed at him until her gaze returned to normal. You're one of the 7 demon lords, why are you here? Gatomon asked him in an even icy voice that made him grin at her boldness. That's not of your business, catgirl, now prepare to be deleted, he says, cocking his gun. Double impact, he shouts, shooting 4 rounds from his shotgun at Gatomon, who dodged the hit but got caught in the explosion, making her fly on a crash course into a tree. Seeing this, Usagi made sprinted towards her and catches her before she could hit it. She looks down at Gatomon's battered form with concerned eyes before turning them on Beelzebumon's. Finding her resolve, she looked back on Gatomon and their eyes locked in a silent agreement. Now standing on her legs, Gatomon puts on a cocky smile before dashing at Beelzebumon's soon-to-be lifeless form. Usagi locks her eyes on his. Warm blue eyes stare into cold green eyes. She soon dives into her power source and brings it to the surface. Now covered in a fiery golden aura, she unclips her digivice and pulls it out in front of her so Beelzebumon could see. He looks at it with a feeling of dread building inside of him and fires another double impact at Gatomon. Seeing it coming, she jumps into the air to avoid them. Calling out to Beelzebumon, he turns to face her again, and he sees the determination in her eyes that he only saw in a few people, including a goggle-wearing boy. Sorry Beelzebumon, I didn't want to fight, but you forced my hand, she tells him sadly. Digi-Soul full charge, she yells into the night. Scene change. With Naruto, Usagi must be fighting someone she could handle herself, and if things get too serious, she could always have Gatomon take off her gravity weights, then go mega. Judging by how much energy she's putting out, I say she just went ultimate. Now back to my search, Naruto thought, jumping across rooftops. He had sent Renamon off earlier, telling her to search the east side of the city and that he would call her if her needed her. Landing on a rooftop, Naruto spots something at the corner of his eye, a Renamon staring up at the moon. He was about to yell at her for being lazy when he saw something on her that made him think otherwise. Even in the moonlight, he could see the differences in his Renamon and that one lying on the roof. The sleeves on her arms are purple and not blue, and it matches the description of the Digimon that is partner up with the girl Makino Ruki. So deciding to talk to her, he leaps from his spot on the roof and lands next to her in a crouch. She turns to look at him with calculating eyes before speaking. Who are you? She asked him bluntly. Laughing to himself, he answers her question. Uzumaki Naruto, it's nice to meet you, Renamon, he said as politely as he could, which wasn't really hard due to his recent memory intake. So what do you want? She asked, getting straight to the point. I want you to go and tell your friend Matsuda Takato that I would like to meet him in the park tomorrow at noon. Make sure he brings his Digimon partner with him, because if he does not meet up with me, he trailed off, turning to face Renamon, giving her a serious glare. It will be the fall of your world and it will be on his hands, Naruto finishes with a grim face. Renamon looks at him, getting to her feet and turning her back to him. Why do you want to see him and not anyone else? She asked, looking at him from the corner of her eye. 'Cause only Takato has the power to save this world, he answers before jumping away to find a place to sleep for the night. This world? Renamon asked herself before heading off to Ruki's. Scene change. With Usagi, sorry Impmon, I didn't want to do that to you, but you forced my hand, Usagi thought sadly, gazing down at the battered form of Impmon with Gatomon by her side. Let's go, Gatomon, she says, walking off into the night with Gatomon following right behind her, leaving Impmon's unconscious form lying on the ground. Continuing with her search, she meets up with Renamon and she tells them to follow them. Renamon brings them to an abandoned building where she sees Naruto lying down on a couch that he just summoned. Taking off her bag and pulling out a scroll with the kanji bed on it, she goes through a few hand seals and places her hand on the scroll, resulting in a cloud of some to appear. When the smokes clear, a bed is there and she plops on it face first, with Gatomon joining her. So what happened? She hears Naruto ask her. She looks at him for a second before turning back face down on her bed right into her pillow. I got into a fight with an Impmon who had information on our target, she said, still with her head in her pillow. So what did he say? Ne-chan? Damn, I did it again. Did what again? Why do I want to call her Usagi but want to even more to call her Ne-san? Since your memories of your past life was forced back to the surface, they're intertwining with your memories of this life, so it's going to get strange for a while. Can you do anything about it? I don't want memories of my past life trying to make their way into my life, please, Kyubi. Whatever, just stop your whining and I expect something in return later. This don't come free. Oh, and you might want to pay attention to the Odango girl. She looks pretty pissed, huh? Naruto said, snapping out of his inner conversation and looking at a very angry Usagi. Are you even listening to me? She yelled into his ear. What were you saying again? Was intelligent reply while scratching the back of his head. Never mind, I'm going to sleep, I'll tell you in the morning, she yelled, throwing her hands in the air and walking back to her bed. Yeah, whatever, Renamon, he called out to her, and she phased in by his side. Yes? What would you like to sleep on tonight, a couch or a bed? Neither, I'll sleep on the roof tonight. Okay, and Renamon, can you make sure they're wear up before noon tomorrow? All right, Naruto. With that, she phased back out of sight. Maybe all Renamon like the outdoors more than the inside? He asked himself before he went to sleep for the night. Scene change. With Ruki's Renamon was rushing to Ruki's house with a half-dead Impmon hoisted on her shoulders. She makes her way to Ruki's house by flipping over her gate and running into her room by slamming the slide door into her room open, jolting Ruki out of her sleep. Ruki look from Renamon to Impmon to Renamon again, then yell out at her. What the hell happened to him, Renamon? Asked Ruki, getting out of her bed. I don't know, Ruki. I found him in the park in this condition, she told her, sadly lying Impmon on Ruki's bed. Do you know who did this, Renamon? Ruki demanded, barely containing her anger. No, I don't, but I think we'll have our answers tomorrow morning at noon, Renamon said, staring at Ruki's angry, confused eyes. What are you talking about, Renamon? Ruki asked, walking to the bathroom to grab a wet washcloth for Impmon. I met a boy tonight. He said that he wanted to speak with Takato tomorrow at noon. He also wanted him to bring Guilman with him. He said if he does not come, the fall of the world will be on his hands. I also believe that he had something to do why Impmon is in this condition, she told her tamer with a solemn look on her face. Alright, Renamon, I'll call Gogglehead and Genria right now and meet this person and kick his ass for what he done to Impmon, Ruki said, placing the damp washcloth on Impmon's forehead and walking to the phone. Dialing in Takato's number, she waits for him to answer. She didn't have to wait long before a sleepy Takato answered his phone. Hello? He said with a yawn. Gogglehead, it's me, Ruki, and we have a problem. What kind of problem? Couldn't it have waited until tomorrow morning? He whines. No, and stop your whining. Impmon got hurt today, she shouted at him, causing him to wince at the volume of her voice. What happened to him? Is he all right, Ruki? He asked frantically, and if the situation wasn't dire she would have smiled, but not now. Shut up and listen. Meet me at the park tomorrow at noon and don't be late. Also bring Guilman because I'm sure the ones who did this to Impmon will be there tomorrow as well, and remember, don't be late or else, she tells him before hanging the phone and dialing Genria number. Hello, who is it? Said a very irritated Genria Lee. Brainiac, it's be Ruki, meet me and Goggles at the park tomorrow, she tells him, getting tired of this already. Okay, but why? Impmon got seriously injured today and he wants who did are meeting us in the park tomorrow at noon. Alright, me and Terriermon will be there, he says before hanging up the phone and going back to sleep. Hanging up her phone and walking in her room, she realized she can't sleep in her bed because Impmon's unconscious form was already in it. She would just kick him out of it, but she thought better of it and just went to the couch in the living room and slept there for the night. Renamon lied on the branch in the tree in the garden, gazing at the moon before going to sleep. Scene change. Shinjuku Park at noon. 5 figures could be seen approaching the park. One figure was a human boy with a pair of yellow goggles on his head of wild brown hair. Red eyes that had nervous look to them. He wore a blue hoodie with a white undershirt and yellow wristbands. He had on gray shorts and green and white shoes. Next to him was a red dinosaur with black markings all over his body with a hazard symbol on his white chest area. He bat-shaped wings for ears and had a childlike expression on his face with his yellow eyes burning with innocence. On the dinosaur's right was a half-Japanese half-Chinese descendant boy. He had short blue hair and gray eyes that show that he was always ready for the worst-case scenario. He was dressed in an orange vest over a black undershirt with white wristbands. He wore brown pants with gray and yellow shoes. On his shoulder was a rabid dog-like creature with a horn on its head. It had black eyes with green markings on its long ears that seemed too long for its long body. The rabbit thing has green markings on its wrist and ankles. Next to the boy was a girl with a scowl on her face. She had red hair done in a pineapple hairstyle with lavender color eyes that were burning with barley-contained rage. She wore a white and blue shirt with a blue heart in the middle of her shirt and had on red wristbands. She had on blue pants that were scuff up with a card holster on her left leg. She wore a pair of red and white shoes. These figures were Matsuda Takato, Guilmon, Genria Lee, Terriermon, and Makino Ruki. They were here to meet two guardians who were currently 10 minutes late. "Where the hell are they?" yelled a very irritated Ruki. Backing away from the very temperamental redhead, Henry and Takato took their time to catch up while Terriermon and Guilmon played around. When 15 minutes went by, they saw three figures running to their area. When they arrived, they were completely out of breath, while two of them were while the other was barely winded. Looking around, the guardians spotted their target and straightened themselves out and spoke. "Matsuda Takato, we need to have a word with you," spoke Naruto, very seriously, matching gazes with the goggle-wearing tamer. "Before we talk, what did you do to Impmon last night?" the boy demanded, who wasn't Takato but Genria, looking deadly serious, making Usagi go wide-eye for a brief second before returning her gaze back to normal. But that little action caught Ruki's attention. "Do you know what happened, Odango head?" she snapped at her, earning a glare from Usagi, one that Ruki matched. "Yes, I know what happened to him," she said, still glaring at Ruki, who threw a darker one at her when she heard this, and also getting the other tamers and their Digimon full attention. "What happened to him?" Ruki asked in a silent but deadly tone that could still be heard by all in the surrounding area. "I kicked his ass, that's what happened to him," said the Gatomon that was just now being noticed by the tamers. Earning a growl from Guilmon and a "Gatomon, watch your language," from Usagi. "A Gatomon, so you're a tamer? I guess I'll have to show you what happens when you mess with one of my friends," Ruki said, pulling out her D-Arc. When she did this, Usagi brought out her Digivive burst to show the tamers. "I'm not a tamer, sorry, I'm a guardian and I would really not like to fight you," Usagi said, holding a firm grip on her Digivice. "Not a tamer? I don't care when you hurt Impmon, you already had a fight on your hands," Ruki said, pulling out a card from her deck while it changed into a blue card. "Now we didn't come here to fight, we just want to talk to Takato," Naruto said, also pulling out his Digivive burst while muttering about, "Damn temperamental women," earning a "Hey," from Usagi since she heard him. The other two tamers were trying to calm down Ruki before she does anything to rash. "Ruki, calm down, they only wanted to talk, let's hear them out," pleaded Takato in attempt to calm Ruki down. "Come on Ruki, if you continue to act like this you'll never get a boyfriend," piped up Terriermon, earning a serious death glare from the redhead tamer. Effectively shutting up the rabid Digimon. "How about we just let them fight so we could have our conversation," Genria said, hearing something along the lines of, "I agree with him," from Naruto. This has the desired effect. He wanted everybody stopped what he or she were doing to look at him. "Like I said, let them fight and we can talk," he repeated. "I agree with you, as soon as this is over the sooner we can talk," Naruto also said, getting impatient with the situation. "So Odango and the crazy redhead will fight, then we can talk, got it," he said, folding his arms and nodding his head to himself while also getting a lump on the head courtesy of Usagi and a death glare from Ruki, causing him to wave his hands in front of his face, saying sorry. After all the chaos was done, Ruki and Usagi stood across from each other holding their each respected Digivice in their hands. Before they could start, a very familiar voice decided to join in on the fun. "You're not going to start without me, or ya?" said a limping and bruised Impmon. When the other tamers saw his condition, they threw a glare at Usagi, who just ignored it on the outside while on the inside she was sweating bullets. Naruto was bored with the situation and just wanted to leave and scream at them. "Would you all just get this over with? We still have things to do, damn it," he screamed impatiently, earning another bump on the head by Usagi and causing the other to wince at the volume of his voice. "Hey wait, you're the crazy blonde girl from last night," said Impmon, pointing at Usagi with fear in his eyes. "Yes, I am. So can we start now, because we still have other people to find," Usagi said, pulling a rice ball from out of one of her pockets from her coat and eating it with a happy look on her face. "Fine, let's start, Renamon," Ruki called out, and Renamon phased in by her side. "Before you start, Renamon," Naruto called out as well, earning a gasp of surprise from the tamers and their Digimon. When she phased in right next to him, they see that she looked exactly like Ruki's Renamon, except this one had blue sleeves instead of purple. "You have a Renamon too? I bet she's a weakling. There no way she could compare to my Renamon," Ruki said with a cocky smile. Being the competitive person that he was, he answered her. "Yeah right, my Renamon could read a book while fighting yours," he said while mentally he was saying, "Which is kind of true, I saw her do it once in the digital world. Her and Kakashi would get along great," Yeah right, that second-rate Digimon can't compare to her. They were throwing one insult after the next while the others had a growing sweat drop at the exchange. When they looked like they were done, the Digimon and their partners got ready to fight. I hope you can last longer than the imp did, Gatomon said with a cocky smile while getting a death glare from Impmon. Oh trust me I will. Renamon replied, dashing towards Gatomon, who swiftly dodged her by jumping on her head and flipping off, landing behind her. When Gatomon turned to face Renamon, she ran at her with a speed that she couldn't keep up with and attacked her. Lighting paw, Gatomon shouted, striking Renamon in her stomach, making her fly back and ram into a tree, breaking it. You're too slow to keep up with me. If you plan on beating you should try going to Ultimate or Mega, because champion level would be no use to you, Gatomon purred while licking her paws, eyeing Renamon carefully. When Renamon got up, she was bleeding from the mouth, earning a gasp of shock from her tamer. Nodding her head towards Ruki, she took this as her cue to draw a card from her pouch and concentrating on it, changing it into a blue card. Grabbing her D-Arc and turning it to her side, she swiped the card through and yelled out. Digi-Modify Matrix Digivolution activate. Renamon was surrounded in a cocoon of data. Renamon Matrix Digivolved to. And when she came out, she had on shaman-like clothing. You want a description of her ultimate form? Look it up in Wikipedia. Talmon, she shouted, rushing Gatomon with a giant paintbrush in her hand, attacking her with swift and quick attacks which Gatomon was having difficulty dodging. Take her down, Talmon, Ruki encouraged her Digimon. While Usagi just looked on with a small smile on her face, which infuriated Ruki. What is she smiling at? Can't she that she's going to lose at this rate? Ruki thought bitterly. She turns her gaze back to the fight to see Gatomon jump on Talmon's paintbrush and run up it, hitting Talmon in the face with another lighting paw attack. Gatomon flips over Talmon and lands in a crouch just to avoid another attack from the shaman's paintbrush. 1,000 spells. Talmon shouts out, jumping in the air and pulling up her sleeves, and shoots out 1,000 magical red spell papers at Gatomon. The attack moves too quick for Gatomon to dodge and she is bound by the spells. She looks up to see the smirking face of Talmon with her arms still stretched out. Oh no, is all she said before Talmon let loose another 1,000 spell at her and exploding on contact, making her fly high into the air where Talmon was waiting. When she reached Talmon, she was hit on her head with the shaman Digimon's paintbrush with great force, making her rocket back to the ground like a meteor approaching the planet. When she hit the ground, a giant explosion shook the whole area and Gatomon was laid out in a 15-foot wide crater, still couscous but barely. Rushing to the crater, Usagi jumps in to check on Gatomon's condition. When she sees Gatomon trying to get to her feet but was only able to make to one leg while kneeling on the other. She was bleeding all down her face with one eye open, breathing hard. Gatomon, are you alright? Usagi asked her Digimon in a whisper. Gatomon looks at Usagi with a small smirk on her face. Of course I'm alright, especially when you're going to help me, right? She says with the smirk on her face growing bigger. Usagi stares at Gatomon for a few minutes before smiling and searching within herself for the power needed to help Gatomon evolve to higher levels. When the familiar power rushes to the surface, she is once again covered in a golden aura. All around feels this power radiating off of Usagi. When it reaches Impmon, he starts shaking in fear but tries to keep a smile. Guilmon sees this and asks why he's shaking, bringing the attention off of Usagi and on him. So he tells them why. This is the same power I felt before I got my ass handed to me, even when I was in blaster mode, he says with a solemn look on his face, making everyone there gasp in shock. Expect Naruto and his Renamon. Digi-Soul full charge. Usagi yells out to the heavens with her crest of purity shining. Gatomon Digivolve too. She is surrounded in a bright light before she re-emerges from it looking like an angel from heaven. She had long blonde hair that went down her mid-back. Glowing blue eyes that seemed to look into the depths of your soul. She has a golden wing-shaped armor breastplates covering her chest. A long white glove with mini angle wings on it that went up a little ways past her elbow. 2 white belts going over her stomach area. She has a white exquisite garb that covers most of her left side of her body and going down to her left leg, turning into a zip-up boot, but leaves her right leg bare with 2 white belts going around her thigh. A long white scarf with feathers at the end of the intertwining her arms that goes over her head and around her back. A golden ring wrapped around her left ankle. Her right foot has on a feathery boot folded down, showing the gold lining in them. To finish it off, she has 8 glowing white wings on her back. Purity Anjuamon, she calls out in her new form, boring a glare through Talmon's head. It's time for a little payback, Purity Anjuamon says in a heavenly voice while summoning a sword to her hands. The blade was snow white with a golden aura around it. The hilt was also white with gold angel wings for the guard. Prepare to be struck down by my celestial sword, Purity Anjuamon said, getting into a ready stance. Talmon also got into a ready stance, and when the wind shifts they took off at breakneck speed at each other. The Tamers and their Digimon can only watch in awe at this angel Digimon. Being the first one to snap out of his shock, Genria pulled out his D-Arc to get information on the Anjuamon look-alike. Come on, get me some data on her. Ah, here we go, Genria said, getting the attention of the other two Tamers and their Digimon. Name: Purity Anjuamon, Ultimate Level Digimon Vaccine. Holy and Celestial Type Digimon Attacks: Celestial Explosion, Dimensional Cutter, Holy Eye, Celestial Arrow, Heaven's Charm, and Heaven's Charge. This Holy and Celestial Digimon is said to be in higher rank than Anjuamon due to her ability to call the legendary Celestial Sword with her holy and celestial power. This blade is said to be able to cut through anything with unholy taint and is also rumored to be able to cut through realities. She is one of Offenimon's personal guard. Get her mad and she'll send you to hell with her dimensional cutter. If that doesn't kill you, her holy eye will. Everybody who heard this was slack-jawed at the information about Purity Anjuamon. Takato was wondering what these people wanted with him. Guilman was watching the fight in awe, hoping to get to fight a Digimon like that next. Genria was throwing wary glances at Usagi and Naruto. Impmon was throwing fearful glances at Purity Anjuamon's sword. Terriermon was talking about the data on Purity Anjuamon. Well shit, Taumon's toast, Terriermon said, earning him a death glare from Ruki and a warning, Terriermon, from Genria. Sorry, hey, how about after this is over we go out to a donut shop, Genria? Unfortunate for Terriermon, Usagi heard this and decided to ask him about it later while she focused back on the fight that was happening in front of her. Taumon and Purity Anjuamon weapons clashed again in the sky. When their weapons locked again, Purity Anjuamon kicked Taumon in her gut, making her gasp for air, and that was all the time Purity Anjuamon needed. Celestial Arrow, she called out, making a bow and arrow out of pure energy. She fired multiple shots at Taumon, who wasn't able to dodge the barrage of arrows in time, resulting into her becoming bloody and tattered. Soon Purity Anjuamon flew towards the dazed Taumon in a burst of speed and appeared next to her with her arms around her neck as if she was leaning in for a kiss. She leaned in by Taumon's ear and whispered, "Celestial Explosion," and her body was engulfed in a bright light that filled the entire area before she exploded, taking a part of the park with her. Usagi watched with teary eyes, repeating, "I told her not to do that move," over and over again. Ruki fell to her knees with silent tears falling from her eyes and she screamed, "Renamune." When the light died down, everyone could see two forms rapidly falling from the sky. One was the unconscious form of Renamune, who was close to deletion before she digivolved into Vixamon, crashing into ground, making a giant crater in the ground. The other was the smirking form of Gatomon before she also digivolved into her in training form Niaromon and crashing into the ground, causing another giant crater. Well, that was some fight. Are they going to have popcorn next time? Terriermon remarked sarcastically. Popcorn? Can we get some, Takatomon? Guilman asked Takato innocently while said Tamer sweat drop at what his Digimon said. I'm not a Mon, Guilman, and yes, maybe later, but first how about we go check on how Renamon's doing, he stated, getting everyone back on important matters. After Taumon's and Purity Anjuamon's fight, we find the Tamers and the Guardians all sitting, or in Ruki's and Impmon's case, leaning against the wall in Guilman's shed. Currently Ruki is glaring at Usagi, who was completely ignoring her. They were discussing why they were there and why they need Takato to come with them. So let me get this straight, you need me to help save the universe from something called the ultimate chaos? Takato asked once again for the 5th time. Sighing at Takato's question, Usagi told him yes and explained to him one last time. Yes, Naruto, you and I are beings called Guardians. There is one Guardian in each main universe. There are 7 Guardians, and all the previous Guardians will no longer have the power to guard their universe much longer. My mother told me, who was the guardian of my universe, that the previous Guardians before us only have 4 years at most to continue to guard their universe before their powers completely leave them and come to us, Usagi explained while trying to ignore Ruki, who was boring a glare through her head. Takato and the others continued to think over what she just said when an unexpected voice walked in on the conversation. The princess is right, Takato, said the voice of Takato's teacher Asanuma Nami. She has brown hair and matching brown eyes. She was wearing a red shirt with a black skirt that went past her knees. She had on a pair of red high heels on. She had the symbol of chaos for earrings and she has it engraved into her bracelets. She was staring at the group of children with a small smile on her face. Ms. Asanuma, what are you doing here? Takato asked, shocked that his homeroom teacher was standing in his shed. Shaking her head at his stupid question that should have been obvious, so she explained her reason. Takato, I was the guardian of this universe, she told him casually, making the 3 Tamers and Digimon stare at her with wide eyes. So you're the previous guardian of Chaos, the Queen of Mars? Naruto asked, shocking Usagi and the Tamers. Wait, so you're supposed to be Rei's mother from the Silver Millennium? Usagi asked very loudly, pointing at her, making the other flinch at her voice besides Naruto, who was somehow immune to it. Yes, I am. How is she? She asked her with a smile on her face, again getting over Usagi's loud voice. Thinking what she was going to say because she didn't want to mention about Senshi wanting to kick her out, so she told her what she could. Well, she's mean, very temperamental, fiery attitude, but an overall nice person, and if you don't already know, she's Sailor Mars. Usagi told her the best she could without telling about the betrayal. I see, was all she said before she turned to the Tamers, who were really confused at this point. But before she could say anything to them, Usagi asked another question that made her stop in her tracks. Hold on, if you're Queen of Mars, does that mean? She stopped looking at her and glanced at Takato from the corner of her eye, but everyone caught it. Rubbing her temples, she nods her head and turns toward Takato, who was looking even more confused than before. Takato, listen to me and listen good, I want no interruptions from you or anyone else, you got that? She told them all with a glare that had fire dancing in her eyes. Nodding their heads so they wouldn't invoke her wrath, they listened to her while she explained more on what the Guardians do. Takato, you and the other Guardians, along with yours and their siblings, all came from a time called the Silver Millennium. Princess Serenity, or as you know her as Usagi, was the Princess of the Moon, along with her brother Naruto, who was Prince of the Moon, and all the children from the other planets except the Princess of Pluto all had their memories erased by us Guardians. We then sent you and the other new Guardians to different universes to be reborn before the Chaos ordered the attack on the Moon Kingdom to destroy it. When the kingdom fell, Queen Selena T then sent you Usagi and your friends to be reborn on your planet Earth. But by doing this, she drained most of her powers and had to go to the Guardian realm so she wouldn't be the target of the Chaos. Both you and Usagi had both faced off a small army of the Chaos. You, Takato, and the other Tamers faced the one as you call the D-Reaper, was only a small scale of the real Chaos. You three have to find the rest of the Guardians soon, and here is the next one, she said, handing Takato a document. Usagi, Naruto, and the other Tamers gathered around to look at the document. Name, Arisawa Tatsuki, age 15, crest, the crest of virtue. Current location, Kakaura, alternate Japan, current team none. School, Kakaura High School. Note, has high spirit awareness, is able to see ghost and Shinigami. She is currently being trained with Urahara Kisku, the previous guardian of virtue, in the arts of being a Shinigami. Past life, was the second princess of Jupiter's sister to first Princess Mikoto. Now that you have looked at the mission specs, now is the time to ask questions, she told them while staring at them with an impassive face. You said that I was in the time of this Silver Millennium. If that's true, what planet did I come from? Takato asked, staring at his teacher intently while the others looked on with curiosity. Expect Naruto and Usagi because they already knew what was coming. Takato, you were the Prince of Mars, which meant that you were my second child, she told him while closing her eyes. If she would have had them open, she would have seen Takato, Ruki, Genria, and their Digimon with their eyes wide and jaws slacked. But if what you say is true, then I'm in your mai, he stuttered before he fainted from shock. The others looked at him, then back at Nami, then Takato again before sweat dropping. Why did Takatoman faint? Guilman asked, who wasn't really paying attention to the earlier conversation, causing the other to form even larger sweat drop. Never mind that, Guilman. Usagi, you and Naruto grab him and get going. I will open the portal to the next dimension for you. Also make sure you give him his crest for him when he awakens. Also have Kisku turn you into Shinigami while you're there. Each of the Guardians will go through the same thing you're about to go through, so don't worry about anything, she told them before clapping her hands together and opening them, making a portal appear. She then handed them his crest while carrying Takato with Guilman by his side. They were about to step through the portal, but Nami and Ruki stopped them. Guardians, good luck, you're going to need it, and tell Takato that I will handle everything with his parents, so he shouldn't worry. Also tell him that I will talk to him when he goes to the Guardian realm, where you will also begin to get his past memories back, she told them before walking off. Next, Ruki stepped up. She looked at Usagi with a death glare, but it didn't affect her because she always got worse ones from Rei. Odango Itama, make sure you take care of Gogglehead, and if anything happens to him I will give you an even war ass kicking than I was already planned on giving you when you return here, she snarled at her before walking off with Vixamon asleep in her arms. Genria and Terriermon walked up next. Naruto, have a good trip, we will be waiting for Takato's return, be safe, he told him, shaking Naruto's hand. Naruto just gave him a foxy smile, then spoke up to him. Don't worry, nothing will go wrong with Uzumaki Naruto on the mission, he said proudly, earning a laugh from Genria and Usagi. Terriermon and Renamon, who was in the Digivice, rolled their eyes at him. With you on the mission, I bet everything will go wrong, Terriermon commented, perched up on Genria's shoulder, earning a Terriermon from him and a glare from Naruto, who was about to start preforming hand seals, but Usagi grabbed him and walked through the portal with Takato on Guilman's back, who was following them. Guilman then poked his head back out the portal to speak with Genria, Terriermon, and Impmon, who was still leaning against the wall, who was being silent the whole time. Bye guys, we'll be back soon, he said in his childish voice with a wave before walking back through the portal. leaving the others to their own thoughts until Impmon broke the silence. "Ya think Takato will be alright?" Impmon asked, using Takato's name that he never really uses, with a concerned look on his face. "He'll be fine, especially with those two with him. I don't know how strong Naruto and his Renamon is, but I do know that Usagi and her partner is strong, so he has nothing to worry about," Genria told him, and then Terriermon used this time to make another comment. "You should know, Impmon, you did get beat by those two," Terriermon said, laughing at Impmon, who was glaring at the rabbit Digimon. "Shut up," he shouted, stomping out of the shed. Genria looks at Terriermon, who's trying to tiptoe away only to get knocked on his head by his tamer. "Why you do that for, Genria?" Terriermon shouted at him angrily. "You know why now, come on, before Shuichan decides to play PWINCESS Pweddy Pants with you," he said, laughing at Terriermon walking away from him, hearing him shout about him to stop messing around. Bleach Universe. After stepping through the portal, they arrived in Karakura, right in front of a place called Urahara Shop. The guardians who were conscious looked at the shop's name, then at the folder, then at the shop again, before smiling and walking up to the shop and knocking. After waiting for a few minutes, a red-haired boy opened the shop's door and stared wide-eyed at Guilman, who was staring at him with innocent eyes. Mentally slapping themselves for not having Guilman digivolve into his in training level before knocking, Naruto came up with the best excuse he could come up with. "This is our dog, so stop staring and as Urahara kissed you in," he told the redhead, who was looking at him like he was stupid, before nodding and told them to follow him. He led them to a room where there was a futon and put Takato down on it. The boys soon left the room and Usagi used this time to look at her brother. "That was the best excuse you could come up with?" she asked him in a hush whisper. He looked at her with a sheepish grin while scratching the back of his head. "Yes, it was, but it's not like you could come up with anything better," he told her with a big grin on his face, while Usagi looked away from him, trying to contain her anger. Truth was, she couldn't come up with anything better, and she probably would have used the same excuse he used. While she was thinking this, a blond man walked in with a green bucket hat on with wooden sandals. He walked in and leaned against the wall with his cane in his hand. "You must be the new guardians, correct?" he asked in a cheery voice. The two guardians looked at him in shock, wondering how they knew who they were. As if reading their minds, he answered them. "I'm a guardian myself. You think I wouldn't recognize when others are around? Now come on, and you," he says as he points towards Guilman. "The Digimon stay here with your partner when he wakes up. Jinta will take him to where we are," he said, getting up and leading them out the room into an underground area that was being demolished by a black-haired girl with a katana in her hand, dressed in a black hiroi and hakama. "So I'm going to take a wild guess and say that's the girl we're looking for," Naruto said with a sweat drop forming on the back of his head. "Yes, that's Arisawa Tatsuki, the new guardian of virtue," Urahara told them as he walked over to the crazy sword-swinging girl. "Tatsuki-chan, you have some visitors," he shouted out in an overly cheery voice. Tatsuki stopped her swinging and turned towards Urahara with a raised eyebrow. She then turned her gaze to Naruto and Usagi. "Who is it?" she asked as she inspected the other two guardians until her eyes rest on a very familiar tag and crest. "Oh, so you two must be guardians like me, since you have a crest, right?" she asked them with uncertainty, but that all soon cleared up as she saw the two of them nod their heads. "My name is Sakino Usagi. Nice to meet you," Usagi said in a very cheery voice that reminded Tatsuki of her friend Orihime. "Nice to meet you, Usagi-san," Tatsuki said as she did a small bow. She then looked at Naruto, who was staring at her with an bored expression. "The name's Uzumaki Naruto, greatest ninja alive," Naruto said with his hands folded behind his head, giving her a foxy smile. Tatsuki gave him a blank look before nodding her head to him, which he returned. Usagi was giggling slightly at Naruto's introduction before she whipped out a familiar orange book that Naruto instantly recognized. "Why do you have that book?" Naruto shouted, pointing his finger at Usagi's Icha Icha Paradise Special Edition. Usagi gave Naruto a small glare before sitting on a nearby rock to continue her reading. Naruto, Tatsuki, and Urahara watched as Usagi continued to read as she giggled every few minutes, figuring that he wasn't going to get an answer. Naruto turned his attention back to Urahara. "Urahara," Naruto said, trying to get the man's attention, which he got instantly as he pulled out a fan from under his sleeves, and when he opened it the fan read, "Yes." Naruto sweat drop at this. "Nami, the previous guardian of chaos, wanted you to make us into Shinigami. She also wanted the others change into Shinigami once we gather them." Urahara nodded his head and told them to follow him. He led them to the middle of the clearing and told them to wait for a few seconds. "Ururu, I need you to bring the training equipment," he yelled out, and like magic a black hair girl with pigtails with two long bangs falling down the middle of her face appeared. She had dark blue eyes that held a shy expression in them. She wore a white shirt with a pink skirt that had large white polka dots on them. She wore a pair of black flat shoes. She was carrying a brown box that was filled with gloves and headgear. "Here you go, Urahara-san," she said as she gave him the box, which he just sat down. "Thank you, Ururu," he told her with a small smile on his face which she gave on in return. Oh, before we start, Urahara said as he lifted his cane and slammed it into Naruto then into Usagi, making them come out of their bodies and into their spirit form with a long chain connected to their bodies. When they both got themselves together they glared at Urahara, who just smiled at them. What was that for you, Ba? Naruto never got to finish because Usagi hit him over with her fist. Usagi then gave Urahara a look that she wanted him to explain, which he did. What I did was separate your spirit form from your bodies. The long chain you see is your chain of destiny and is the only thing that connects you to your body. Without it you would turn into a hollow. A hollow is a corrupt soul that feeds on Ryotsu and dead humans. Now that the gloomy stuff is over with, it's time for your first test, he finished with a cheery voice. First test, Usagi and Naruto said in unison. He pointed his hand over to Ururu, who had a mushroom-type hat on with a pair of mushroom-type gloves on. Your first test is to face Ururu, he told them as they both stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Are you crazy? I'm not going to fight some little. Once again Naruto never finished as he got punched in the face by Ururu, making him fly back into a boulder. Usagi watched this in shock until she tried to move but found that she had difficulty moving. So she moved as fast as she could before she was also punched and slammed into the same boulder that Naruto had hit earlier. Usagi couldn't move, so she just lied there and Naruto was pushing himself up with a little less difficulty than Usagi. He soon saw Ururu charging at him, so he took off running towards the protection gear. He looked behind him to see that she was jogging to him and catching up at a fast pace. When he finally reaches the gear he quickly grabs an orange headband and gloves, then take off running again, leaving 3 confused people watching him as he ran. Hey, how the hell do I put these on? Naruto shouted as he continued to run from Ururu, who had just jumped into the air and punched the ground with tremendous force. Naruto looked behind him to see a giant crater. If he didn't see it himself he would have said that she had Tsunade's super strength. Naruto, to activate the gear you have to say this. Naruto listened as he continued to run from Ururu. Usagi had now picked herself up and was now slowly making her way to the box where all the gear was at. Take this, the power of justice, justice armor, justice headband, equip. Urahara shouted out to him and Usagi stared at him before he winked at her, which she got the hint and watched Naruto. Alright, let's do this. Hell no, I won't say that crap. Naruto shouted before he was punched in the stomach, making him cough up some blood as he flew back a few feet away from Ururu. He picked himself up and ran again while thinking. Damn it, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Kyuubi had just woke up and was watching Naruto with an amused smirk on his face. Take this, the power of justice, justice armor, justice headband, equip. He shouted as he tried to attach the headband to his head, which did nothing. He soon heard loud laughter coming from Usagi, who was currently rolling on the ground holding her sides with tears coming out from her eyes. It also didn't help that he heard Kyuubi also howling laughter, which made him frown. He then heard something that pissed him off greatly. I can't believe he actually said that, Urahara said to himself, and Naruto threw down the gear in anger. Tatsuki watched this with pity in her eyes because she went through the same thing that he did. She was soon shook from her thoughts by Naruto's loud voice. Why, you bast? And again Naruto was cut off as he jumped over a punch that Ururu sent him. Naruto soon ran again but soon found out that his speed was now matching Ururu's and went on the offensive. Usagi, seeing this, soon took off towards the two, who wasn't that far from her current position, and ran after them once she was able to move freely herself again. Usagi had on a white headband with white gloves that she had snatched from the box and put them on without saying the ridiculous incantation that Naruto had said earlier. Usagi soon reached them and was now throwing punches with Naruto at Ururu, who was swiftly dodging them all. Ururu soon went back on the offensive and threw a punch at Naruto, who ducked under the punch, earning a smirk from Urahara. Ururu soon followed up with another punch to Usagi, who swiftly dodged to the right and threw a punch herself at Ururu, who did a backflip to dodge out the way. She soon was put on the defensive as both Usagi and Naruto was not letting up in their attacks until Naruto punched Ururu in the face and Usagi kneed her in the stomach. The both stopped and smirked slightly, but those smirks soon dropped when Ururu soon disappeared from sight. Usagi soon found Ururu standing in front of her with her leg cocked back before she was hit with it in her stomach, sending her flying back into a giant boulder. Before she hit it she was saved by a dark man with his hair in braids with glasses on and appeared to wearing a blue apron. My name is Tsukabishi Tesai, nice to meet you, he said with a friendly smile, which Usagi returned before he helped her out of the crater that their bodies made in the boulder. She looked over at Ururu, who seemed to have been stopped before she attacked Naruto by Urahara, who was holding her leg. First test is a success, he told them as he brought back out his fan. Both Naruto and Usagi stared at him in confusion. We didn't pass because we never beat Ururu-chan, Usagi said as she tilted her head to the side slightly. Ah, but you did. I said that you had to face Ururu. I said nothing about beating her in a fight, he explained as he laughed happily. So what the hell was the point of all this? Naruto asked rudely, but Urahara paid no mind to it. The point was so you would build up your Ryotsu. You remember how you could barely move when you first started. Spirits are only able to build up their Ryotsu when they are in a life-threatening situation, something you both were in, he finished as he saw both of them nod their heads. He then turned to Tessai and Ururu. Ururu, is that hole still there? He asked Ururu, who said a quiet yes. He then turned his attention to Tessai and nodded his head towards the man. Urahara soon turned to his two guests who was watching him silently. He then lifted his cane and took off its sheath, which turned into a sword, and cut both of their chains of destiny. Before Usagi or Naruto could say anything, they were both tied up by some chains and thrown into a hole a few feet away from them. They both stood up as fast that they could and glared at Urahara, who was looking at them with a serious expression. Why the hell did you do that for? Naruto shouted, but soon stopped when he saw the look Urahara was giving him. He may not have known the guy for very long, but he knew that this was a big change from that happy guy that he knew a few minutes ago. I cut off your chain of destiny, soon you will become a hollow in about 72 hours, he told them, making Naruto gasp and Usagi to have tears come into her eyes. Urahara ignored this and continued his explanation. The only way for you to save yourselves is if you become Shinigamis, and if you fail you become a hollow. He paused as Usagi started crying and Naruto glaring at him. Urahara soon walks away and leaves Naruto with the crying Usagi. Usagi, crying is not going to turn us into a Shinigami any sooner, Naruto told Usagi, who looked at him with her big puffy red eyes. But he said he's going to kill us when we become hollows, she said in a small voice that seemed to have lost all hope. If we become hollows, Usagi, Naruto said, stretching the, I guess the only thing for us to do is to become a Shinigami then, right? He said with a big smile on his face. Usagi stared at him for a few minutes before smiling as well, but the moment was soon broken by a voice from behind them. But you only have 72 hours to change into a Shinigami. Naruto and Usagi both turned around to see Tessai sitting with his legs crossed leaning against the wall staring at the two. When did you get here? Naruto shouted as he pushed himself up against the wall. Usagi also repeated his action and sat against the wall. I was here the whole time watching the two of you, he spoke as he continued to stare at the two of them, making them both shift around nervously. So Tessai-san, what do you mean 72 hours? Usagi asked as she stared at the man with curiosity. It is exactly what I meant. You have 72 hours or 3 days to change into a Shinigami. That is your time limit before you become a hollow, and then we will be forced to kill you, he told them grimly. But I believe that the two of you can become Shinigami, so don't worry, he added, making them cheer up slightly. Yeah, you right, all we need is... Ah, Naruto screamed as the end of the chains connected to his body turned into mouths and began to eat itself. Usagi looked horrified as she watched until she too screamed as her chain began to eat itself. They continued to scream for what felt like hours to them, but in reality was only 5 minutes. Naruto soon pushed himself up against the wall and turned his attention to Usagi, who did the same but with more difficulty than him. What was that? Usagi asked weakly as she waited for an answer. That was your soul chain destroying itself, was all he said as he continued to sit there silently watching the two. Naruto and Usagi did nothing but sit there while trying to figure out a way to change into a Shinigami. Naruto's eyes soon went wide as he remembered Kyuubi. Kyuubi? Naruto called out in his mind, but he received no answer. He tried calling her over and over but received no answer from her. Soon he gave up and decided to talk to Usagi, who seemed to be oddly silent. Usagi Nichan, why are you so quiet? He asked and didn't really seem to notice that he called her Nichan. Just thinking about how my friends are doing back in my world, she said quietly, and Naruto nodded his head, also turning his thoughts on his friends before he heard explosions coming from above them. He turned to Usagi, who also turns to him before they both stare at Tessai, waiting for an explanation. It seems your friend is taking the same test you two have taken earlier. Both siblings look confused at first before realization dawns on them. Takato. They both shouted, making Tessai wince inwardly while remaining calm on the outside. With Takato. 10 minutes earlier, Takato was slowly coming to after his shocking experience. Finding out that there were many different universes out there and that you were a guardian for your own universe. Also, to top it all off, your sensei from school is actually your mother from your past life. It was all too much for Takato to take and fainted on the spot. Now here he was waking up in a strange room that he realized that did not belong to him. He turned to the side to see a big red nose inches from his face, and he did the only thing that seemed logical at the moment. Ah! He screamed as he jumped up quickly and ran to the other side of the room with his back up against the wall. When he looked at the red creature, he breathed a sigh of relief when he realized it was Guilmon. Said Digimon was looking at him curiously with his head tilted to the side slightly. Takatoman, why did you scream like that? Guilmon asked as he walked over to his slightly panicking tamer. Sorry Gilman, I was just surprised, that's all, he said, completely ignoring the Takatoman thing. So where are we anyway, Gilman? Oh, we're in another dimension. What do you mean another dimension? Takato shouted, as he had no idea that he went to another dimension since he was unconscious at the time. Well, your mother told us to go on while you were unconscious. But what about Ruki and Genria? Ruki told the Odango girl to take care of you or she would kick her ass, Gilman told Takato, making him blush a little until Takato realized what Gilman just said. Gilman, you shouldn't use language like that, and what did you mean by Odango girl? Takato asked, confused as his mind was still a little groggy. You know Usagi, the girl who fought Ruki with her Gataman, Gilman explained, making Takato making his mouth go in an O motion. So where are they so I can talk to them? Takato asked as he walked over to the door. Oh, they went somewhere, the Digimon said happily, making Takato sweat drop. And where did they? Was all he got to say as the door slid open, revealing Jinta, who had an annoyed expression on his face. About time you got up. Hurry up and follow me so we can get started with your training. He then turned around and left, not waiting for an answer or to see if he was following him. Takato soon followed him and started asking questions, but none of them were being answered, so he decided to keep quiet as Jinta lead him to the underground training room. Wow, was all Takato could say as viewed the size of the room. Yeah, whatever, come on, Urahara is waiting, Jinta told him rudely before walking over to where Urahara was waiting with Takato and Gilman following him. He led them to the area where Tatsuki was practicing with her Zanpakuto, with Urahara silently watching perched up on a rock. So our last guest is finally awake, Urahara said without turning around, making Takato jump in surprise. Yes, I guess, Takato said while chuckling nervously. Tatsuki come here to meet our other guest, Urahara said happily as he got off the rock and walked over to the nervous Takato, with Tatsuki following closely behind him. Tatsuki, this is Matsuda Takato, the Guardian of Chaos, he told her, which she nodded her head towards him, which he returned. He was going to introduce Tatsuki next, but she cut him off. I'm Arisawa Tatsuki, the Guardian of Virtue, she told him as she looked him over and wasn't really all that impressed with his appearance. She then turned to Urahara, who was silently watching him, before he spoke up. Takato, your mother wanted me to change you and the other guardians into Shinigami's suit, he said happily before he pushed his cane into Takato, making his spirit form come out of his body. When Takato looked at himself, he panicked as he saw a long chain connected to his body. Gilman watched this all with an amused expression on his face. Takatoman, you're pretty funny when you run around like that, the Digimon said, laughing, causing Takato to stop his panicking and stare at his Digimon before throwing a glare at the laughing Urahara and smirking Tatsuki. What the hell did you just do? Takato said through clenched teeth, with his eyes flashing a blood red for a brief second before it was gone. Nobody witnessed this, but both Gilman and Urahara felt something strange coming from Takato. Oh, nothing, just separated your spirit form from your body so we could get started. Tatsuki, since Ururu fought earlier, I want you to give Takato his first test while Gilman and I watch from the sidelines, he said as he dragged Gilman away by his tail, with said Digimon protesting the whole way. Tatsuki walked over to the brown box full of equipment before throwing a red headband with red gloves over to Takato while she pulled out a green pair for herself. Put them on, you're going to need it, she said as she put on the gear. What, why do I have to? He started but didn't finish as he dodged roughly to his side, so he could dodge a sword swipe that Tatsuki aimed at him from above. Why are you attacking me? He said as he tried to catch his breath. Tatsuki looked at him with an annoyed expression before placing herself in her ready stance, making Takato go on guard. This is all part of your first test, Gaki, she said as she ignored Takato's response to the name and continue. Your first test is to fight me and survive, she finished as she gave him a very sadistic look that made a shudder go down his spine. She soon attacked and aimed her sword, attempting to slice off Takato's head. Takato saw this coming and barely ducked under the blow. He looked up at her in fear as he saw a few hairs come off his head before running as fast as his legs could take him away from the crazy sword girl. Sighing, Tatsuki chased after him while sheathing her sword. When she finally caught up to him, she saw him breathing heavily, leaning up against boulder for support. She looked down at him with narrowed eyes before she attacked him again. Back at the sidelines, Urahara was trying to keep Gilman from entering the fight. With Urahara and Gilman, I have to help Takato fight, Gilman snarled as he tried to break free of Urahara's hold. Urahara just looked at Gilman for a brief second before going through an incantation. Jikai Seo, Rondinini no Kuro Inu, Ichidoku Shi, Yaki Harai. Mizukara no do Okaki Kiru ga. He chanted as he focused his Ryatsu, then he continued. Kido number 9. Geki, ha, he said as a red light surrounded Gilman, completely stopping his movements. Smiling to himself, he let go of the growling Digimon. What did you do to me? Gilman snarled at Urahara as he tried to get his body to move so he could help his tamer. Oh, nothing really, just a little binding spell I put on you so that you, he said, pointing his finger over at Guilman, and then he continued his explanation. Won't interfere with their fight, he finished as he pointed over to the area where Takato is, trying to survive Tatsuki's onslaught of punches. I have to help Takato, let me go, Guilman shouted as he continued to struggle against the binding spell but proved to be stronger than what the rookie Digimon could handle. Now Guilman, just sit back and watch the show, Urahara told Guilman as he continued to watch Takato run away from Tatsuki. With Tatsuki and Takato, come on Gaki, you have to fight sometime, Tatsuki shouted as she walked slowly towards Takato, who was cowering next to a giant boulder. Do we really have to do this? Takato asked as he looked for the quickest escape route. Yes, it's the only way for you to become a Shinigami. Are you that afraid to fight me? Are you really willing to let every dimension to be destroyed by the chaos because you were too scared to hit a girl? Are you so much of a coward that you will let all of your friends and family die in your home dimension because you were afraid to fight me? She said coldly as she walked up to him. She stared into his brown-red eyes that were filled with fear before she hit him across his face, making him fall over. You don't deserve to call yourself a guardian if that's the way you're going to act, she finished as she unsheathed her sword and cut off Takato's soul chain 5 inches away from his chest. The chain soon begins to form mouths and starts to eat itself. Takato feels unimaginable pain as a white mask started to form on his face. Takato's mind escaped to Takato. Everything seemed to slow down before he found himself in a red desert that was currently in a sandstorm. He looked around with a shocked face, trying to figure out how he got to this strange place before a voice called out to him. Boy, stand up. A female voice commanded as Takato saw a figure emerging from the sandstorm. She had long raven black hair that went down the middle of her back with a few bangs falling over her eyes. Her eyes were a menacing red that filled him with dread, with a long scar going down her right eye on her pale white skin. She wore a skin-tight black bodysuit that showed off her curves and well-developed chest. She had red armor that were placed on her shoulders, chest, and legs. For shoes she wore a pair of black sandals. On her back were 2 long swords that were held in a red sheath. She stared down at Takato with annoyance before sighing to herself. Boy, stand up, the woman said with more force, making Takato jump to his feet. Takato was about to ask about the place when he found himself being pulled underground. He looks down and sees that he and the entire desert is being sucked into a giant vortex of quicksand that was taking the whole desert in. He searched around for the woman but found that he couldn't find her. As he was pulled under, he found himself in a black area surrounded by white boxes. He looked at the sky and found that the white boxes were falling from where he was earlier. You only have a little amount of time, boy. You must find me before the whole desert disappears, the woman's voice spoke out from all over the place. But how do I find you? Takato asked out into the nothingness. Focus on your inner power, boy, and you will find me. Time is running out, hurry up and find me, boy. The voice soon faded and Takato, thinking of nothing else better, began to do as the woman told him to do. He soon closed his eyes and began to concentrate. When 5 minutes passed by, he opened his eyes to see over 1,000 white ribbons and 1 red one surrounding him. He stared at the red one for a few seconds before grabbing it and pulling on it. Well, red was always my favorite color, he chuckled to himself as a white box that was connected to the red ribbon came into his hand. He opened the box and looked inside, only to find 2 sword hilts sticking out of it. Hurry and pull me out, boy, the woman's voice came back. Takato stared at the box in shock before he saw that more boxes were filling the area before pulling out both swords from the box. And in a flash of light he found himself back in the red desert, but this time there was no sandstorm. He then looked down in his hands to examine the swords that he now carried. In his right hand to see a regular katana with a red hilt. The guard was round and was pure black that had red flame designs on it. The sword was almost as long as he was. The other sword was same in length. The hilt was black and had a round red guard with black flames on it. After he was done examining his swords, he stood in shock when he realized that he was also in different clothing. He wore a black haroi and hakama with a white sash on. He also had on a pair of black sandals on. On his back there were 2 red sheaths for his swords strapped to a black belt that wrapped across his chest area. He soon placed the swords in their sheaths and began to walk around when he came across the same woman he met earlier. She was currently sitting on top of a hill looking up at the starry sky with a small smile on her face before she looked over to his direction. Well done, boy, the storm cleared up and now I'm able to view the beautiful stars, she said as she stared down at the boy. So, who are you and where am I? He asked with a nervous chuckle. We are currently in your mind and my name is, she explained to him while hoping that he heard her name. Sorry, I didn't hear your name, Takato said with a small frown on his face. The lady frowned also before she slowly started to disappear. It seems it is still too early for you to hear my name. You have to leave now and finish your battle with the girl. Until next time, boy, she said as she disappeared from view, and Takato found himself also slowly disappearing. With Tatsuki was currently staring down in shock at what she just did. She didn't mean to cut off his soul chain. She only wanted him to stop acting like a coward and fight her. But now he was turning into a hollow and she would have to kill the kid before he even had a life. She soon drew her sword, preparing for the worst. Her only hope was that boy somehow became a Shinigami so she wouldn't be forced to kill the kid. Then in a huge explosion, Takato's transformation was finished. He stood in his Shinigami uniform with a white mask covering his face. The mask was white and had two black lines going down the slightly tilted eye sockets. The mouth of mask had a sadistic smile plastered on its face that sent shivers down Tatsuki's spine. Takato then suddenly raised his hands, making Tatsuki go on guard, but soon dropped it as she saw that he was reaching for his mask. He then pulled it off to reveal the face of the slightly smiling Takato. He then drew both swords from their sheaths and set himself in a stance that felt somewhat familiar to him. He soon smiled in confident smile at the shocked Tatsuki and said 4 words. "Ready for round 2? Come on, little brother, if you want to beat me you have to try harder," a raven-haired girl said as her brownish-purple eyes glared down at him with disappointment. She was dressed in a black bodysuit that clung tightly to her body like a second skin, showing off her well-developed body. On her shoulders was red metal armor. These were also placed on her shins, thighs, and stomach area. She wore a pair of red fighting shoes. In her hands were her weapons, the 2 sacred swords of Mars. The fist sword name was the High Note Rikon. The blade of the sword was pure stainless silver color with steam coming out of it. When she waved the sword a bit, the blade catches on fire. The hilt and guard of the sword was red with the Mars planet symbol engraved on the guard. The sheath connected to her him was an ordinary black with the Mars planet symbol in red engraved on it. The second sword in her hand was named the Deizu no Enku. The blade was a stainless black that was always surrounded by a black flame. The hilt and guard was a blood red color along with the sword's sheath. The Mars planet symbol was engraved on the sheath of the sword in black. She put herself in a stance, preparing to attack her younger brother once again. Takato felt anger rushing through him as he saw the look of disappointment in his sister's eyes. He knew that he didn't possess the skill to beat his sister, especially when his sister was using the 2 sacred swords of Mars. While he only had 2 average swords in his hands, that had cracks running through the blades of the 2 swords. He was never able to beat his sister before, so why was she pushing him so hard? He was pulled from his thoughts as he heard his sister approaching and only barely dodged her attack that was aimed at his head. He rolled away and quickly got to his feet. Takato searched for his sister, hoping that he could find her because her speed was legendary on Mars. Not even their mother could match her in speed, and he heard her talking to him while she moved rapidly around the room. "Takato, you really disappoint me," she said, making Takato lower his head in shame. "I thought you would have improved over the years, but you've only gotten worse," she said with spite in her voice as she slashed him across his chest, making him scream out in pain. Rei ignored his screaming and continued to berate him, hoping to get him angry enough for him to unleash his full potential like she did so long ago. "You're weak, Takato. You don't deserve to be related to me," she finished with a sneer as she slashed Takato across his back, making him fall, but he caught himself with his swords. Why would she say that? Am I really that much of a disappointment to my family? I don't deserve to be treated like this, do I? He felt himself getting angrier the more he thought about the way his family treated him. My mother barely looks at me and my sister constantly berates me. As he thought this, the Mars planet symbol appeared on his forehead, startling his sister. And the one time my mother ever speaks to me is when she tells me how weak I am, he thought angrily as the symbol on his head began glowing a dark red with a tint of black in it. His sister looks on fearfully as she felt the power radiating of her brother. "I'll show them how strong I can be. I'll show them all," he screamed in his mind as his planet symbol began glowing a dark black and his eyes turned a blood red. The swords in his hands shined an eerie red and he pointed his swords out away from his body. The swords had steam pouring out of them and Takato smirked darkly as he saw them do this. He turned his gaze to his frightened sister, whom had taken a step back as she saw his cold eyes fall on her. Before Takato can say anything, their mother barged into the room, having felt how much power that was being released. Next to her was a girl with brown hair like Takato's with brownish red eyes. She was dressed in a simple red gown and had a small frown on her face as she looked at her sister, but instantly brightens up when she turned her gaze on her brother. She then frowns again as she notices how much power he was releasing and was about to stop him when her mother puts a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let's see what he does," she says coldly with a frown on her face. The girl looks up at her mother with a matching frown before turning worried eyes onto her twin. "I'll show you what true power is," Takato muttered darkly, but the occupants in the room still heard it. The swords in his hands began pulsating with more power and the blades themselves slowly started to catch on fire. The sword in his right hand slowly blazed with a dark fire while in his other hand the sword was blazed with a yellow fire. He bent his knees and twisted his body a bit. He gave a dark glare to his sister, whom finally calmed down enough to focus her power back into her swords as she prepared to counter whatever her younger brother was planning. The sword in her right hand slowly caught on fire with a bright red flame, while the sword in her left hand's blade caught on fire with a black flame. She raised both swords over and behind her head as they were radiating with power, shaking the entire room, just like what Takato had done before her. Takato smirked at his sister, because now he was going to show her that he was truly strong and nobody would call him weak again. Suddenly, without warning, Takato rapidly began spinning in place and the fire from his blades soon wrapped around in a circular motion that lifted all the way above his head. He was soon covered in a dark red and orange fiery tornado that was heading directly towards his older sister, whom had just swung her swords towards the incoming tornado, letting of a black and red energy blast from her two swords. As both attacks hit each other, they called out the names of their attacks. Goka Arashi. Yomi Shinka. Memory end. When Takato came to, he found himself propped up against a rock. He sat up slowly and surveyed his surroundings and wondering what was going on. The last thing he remembered was fighting Tatsuki, then that weird vision, no memory. He remembered that event as clear as day. How his so-called mother always treated him like dirt, no wonder she always gave him a hard time during school. Asanuma-sensei always did give him a hard time, and when she did speak to him she always gave him detention or made him stand out in the hall. He always had a feeling that she didn't like him, and that memory he just received just enforced that feeling. His sister seems to be just like his mother, a cold and heartless bitch. How could his own sister say those types of things about him? He thought that a brother and sister were supposed to care for each other like Genria and Shuichan. Then he smiled a small smile when he remembered seeing the girl who only looked at him with concerned eyes. She was nothing like the other two and she looked familiar to Takato. He could have swore that he had saw her once before from somewhere, he just couldn't think of where, but he knew she was kind. He also felt that there were still a couple of people missing from his little dysfunctional royal family, but he just didn't know who. Before he could dive any deeper into his memory, he felt someone tap his shoulder. Feeling startled, Takato does the only thing he could do at the moment. "Ah!" he screams, as he quickly tries to put distance between him and the person who touched him. Hearing laughter from behind him, Takato turns around only to see Tatsuki holding her sides while laughing hard on the ground. "Laugh it up, Tatsuki-san," Takato said while dusting himself off. Tatsuki soon got her laughter under control and looked at Takato with a curious eye. "So, scaredy cat, why you pass out during our fight?" He started to say only to collapse to his knees and finding it hard to breathe for some reason. He looks over at Tatsuki to see that she's in same condition he's in. As he was trying to get his breathing under control, Takato couldn't help but think this. "Man, my life sucks," with Naruto and Usagi, 5 minutes earlier. "Naruto, this pain is unbelievable. How long have we been here?" Usagi asked as she struggled to get to her feet after collapsing from her last soul chain attack. Naruto was in the same condition as Usagi, but was managing to get back to his feet. He looked down at his chain only to see that there was only a few more feet of it left. He turned his attention over to Tessai, whom was watching everything with a blank expression on his face. "How long have we been down here for, old man?" Naruto asked weakly. Tessai didn't say anything at first, but if you were to look closer you would probably see the little twitch in his eye from being called old. "Exactly 64 hours has passed," he said in monotone. Naruto and Usagi gave him a glare at his tone, but before they could say anything their soul chains began to eat each other again. Naruto and Usagi both screamed in pain as the last of their soul chain ate itself. 5 minutes went by and their soul chains were completely gone, and before they could relax a white mask began to slowly form on their faces. Tessai, thinking quickly, began to chant an incantation for the binding spells he was going to use on the both of them. "Oh, it seems like they're ready," Urahara said from up above with Ururu and Jinta by his side. Ururu was prepared to destroy them, but Urahara held her back and watched the scene carefully with a watchful eye. He was pretty sure that the two of them would end up like the other three before them. Now he just had to sit and wait for them to finish transforming. Usagi's mindscape. Usagi found herself standing in a very dark canyon. Usagi wouldn't say this out loud, but she was very afraid of the dark and tried everything she could to stay in the light. She rapidly looked around trying to find any source of light, and luckily for her she spotted a very bright place. Usagi, not really thinking about anything else, she ran as fast she could towards the light. She jumped from one cliff to the next hoping she could make it the light before something happened to her. The area was appearing closer and Usagi made it after she had tripped a few times in her excitement of getting closer to the light. She looked around the area and that's when she spotted her. A girl who looked no older than 10 was swinging her legs happily while whistling some mystical tune. The girl had long white hair that reached all the way to the ground with bright blue eyes that were full of life and happiness. She wore a long white dress that had a blue dragon design circling around the bottom half of the dress with white heels on. Strapped to her back was a long sword in a white sheath attached to a blue chain that held the sword in place. The girl stops swinging her legs and looks up at Usagi with a glare on her face, startling her a bit. "The darkness is almost here. You must find me to stop the darkness from advancing any further," she spoke softly with an edge to it. "But you're right here," Usagi said with a confused look on her face. "No, find the Zanpakuto and then the darkness will stop advancing on the light," she spoke softly while waving her hand in the air, making the cliffs change into white boxes. But the only problem was that all the boxes were all in the dark surrounding her. She turns back to look at the girl only to find that she had vanished from sight. "Hey, where did you go?" Usagi called out from her spot in the light. "I told you, Usagi, you must find me and stop the darkness from taking over. To find me all you have to do is focus on your power and use it to seek me out. Remember, the light will show you the way." The girl stopped speaking and Usagi decided to take the young girl's advice. She closed her eyes and began to concentrate as hard as she could. She felt a small stinging sensation in the back of her mind, so she figured that she must have done it and opened her eyes. Once she did, she was surrounded by multiple ribbons and one red ribbon that were illuminated with a white light. She shrugged her shoulders and grabbed the red ribbon. She pulled on it only to find that it wouldn't budge, so she followed the shining red ribbon. She walked slowly through the path without really noticing on how much less light seemed to be in the area until she got her motivation. "What do you think you are doing, Usagi? Move your ass before the darkness swallows the rest of the light and your ming collapses," the girl shouted angrily, losing all the softness she spoke with before and replaced with a very deadly tone. Usagi didn't need to be told twice and ran as fast as her legs could take her. She arrived at her destination soon after and saw a white hilt sticking out of a box surrounded by bright light. "Now pull me out and embrace the light." Usagi did what she was told and pulled the sword out of the box. The sword was simply one word: beautiful. The blade was a stainless sliver with a heavenly white glow around it. The guard was triangular and was snow-white color along with the hilt of the sword. The sheath appeared on her back, and when she took it off she got a good look at it. The sheath was black and had the same heavenly white glow as her Zanpakuto. "Now that you have pulled me out, the light will return once again to this valley. When the time comes I will tell you my name, but for now go," the girl's voice called from throughout the valley. Usagi felt herself disappearing from the canyon, and the only thing she could think of before she left was how weird that just was. Naruto's mindscape. That really hurt, Naruto moaned as he sat up from the hard ground he was lying on. He looked around and found that he was in a wasteland in the middle of a fierce windstorm. He felt himself slowly being lifted into the air. Naruto felt the winds cutting at his body and making it hard for him to breathe. He desperately looked around trying to find a way to escape the storm, and that's when Naruto saw the strangest things he had ever saw. A boy who looked to be around Konohamaru's age was floating in the air with his legs crossed, staring right at him. The boy had shoulder-length snow-white hair and pale blue eyes. He wore a blue and white robe with white sandals on and a sword strapped to his back. The boy hovered around Naruto as if he was sizing him up. As the boy moved around him, Naruto got a good look at his sword. The hilt and guard of the sword was a sky blue color. The blade was silver and was almost as long as the boy's body was. The entire sword was covered in a beautiful blue glow that had Naruto staring at it in awe. The boy felt Naruto staring at the katana on his back and let a small smirk grace his face. He hovered right in front of Naruto so they could see eye to eye. "Listen up, because I'm only going to say this once. Your mind is falling apart and you need to find me to stop it. The only way to find me is to listen to the wind and focus on your inner power. Now get started, we don't have much time," the boy finished calmly as he vanished in a gust of wind. Naruto floated in the air, confused and then in shock as millions of white boxes in the air floating around him. "What the hell?" Naruto mumbled under his breath as he stared at the boxes floating around him like a tornado. Shaking his head, Naruto got to work and began focusing on his power. He closed his eyes and listened to the wind, which was entirely hard for him because of his high wind affinity. He heard many different sounds in the wind. One of the sounds he heard sounded angry, the other sounded calm, but shaky, and the last one was real calm with a whistle sound along with it. He opened his eyes and stared on in shock as millions of white ribbons appeared in front of him and one red ribbon off to the side. He looked at it and realized the ribbon is where the whistle noise was coming from. He grabbed it and pulled on it as hard as he could. Moments later a small box appeared in front of him and he saw that the same hilt of the sword the boy was carrying. He looked at it for a few seconds before shrugging and pulling it out. He was a little shocked to see it was the same sword as before and just stared at it for a few minutes. He never noticed that the raging winds around him had died down and was a gentle breeze. Nor did he notice that grass and trees replaced the wasteland that he had awoken on before. But he did feel a presence behind him and he quickly turned around him preparing to strike down the person. He was shocked to see that it was the boy from before and couldn't stop the blade in time from hitting him. He was shocked to see that it never made contact and seemed to have hit an invisible barrier. Naruto looked closer at the barrier and felt a small breeze coming from the laughing boy. "Wow, it's good to know you're not totally useless," the boy said laughing as he rolled all around in the sky. "Shut up, who are you anyway?" Naruto shouted at him. As he asked this the boy stops laughing and got a semi-serious look on his face. "I thought you would have figured it out by now. I'm the Zanpakuto that you have in your hand," the boy said pointing at the katana in Naruto's hand. Naruto looked at the boy in confusion, before looking at his hand and only saw the sword. "You mean you're a sword?" Naruto asked with a deadpan look. "Not sword, a Zanpakuto. It's a katana connected directly to your soul and I happen to be the lucky one connected to yours. So do you have a name or what?" "I do, but you're not ready to hear it yet." "What do you mean I'm not ready to hear it?" Naruto almost shouted at the boy, whom floating around Naruto with a smile on his face. "It's like I said, you're not ready. When the time comes I'll tell you, but not now." The boy looks around the area with a large smile on his face, before turning back to Naruto. "Naruto, it's time for you to go. Remember Naruto, the wind is always with you," the boy said as he flew away, leaving the confused Naruto behind him as he slowly faded from his mind. Back outside, Tessai had just finished the binding spell number 99 and a huge metal cube appeared out of thin air then slammed into the two. Thinking everything was over, Tessai relaxed slightly and that's when the cube exploded with power. Naruto and Usagi both jumped out of the hole in the normal Shinigami uniforms with hollow mask over their faces. The spirit pressure coming off the two of them was simple amazing as it spread all across the training area. It drove Jinta to his knees and made Ururu lose her balance. If you were to look at Urahara close enough you would see that he had a strained look on face. Naruto's mask was shaped like a fox's face with 3 feral black whisker marks on each side of his mask. The eye sockets were squinted like a fox, but if you stared into it you could see glowing red eyes from the inside. The mouth on the mask was the frightening part of the mask. It had a pure sadistic smile that was laced with bloodlust and was ready to kill anything just to feed its hunger. Usagi's hollow mask was also shaped like a fox and was the same as Naruto's except, instead of black whisker marks hers were red and her eyes were glowing an eerie yellow. Her smile was sadistic like Naruto's, but instead of laced with bloodlust, it was laced with hatred and wanting to kill all who dared to harm her. Ururu and Jinta was preparing for the worst, while Urahara just stared on with an impassive face. The children got on their guard once they saw the two of them reaching for their Zanpakutos, but calmed down once they both smashed the hilt of their Zanpakuto into their mask, smashing them to pieces. Once the mask dropped of their faces they both smiled wide grins and looked at their own respected Zanpakuto. "Yes, we did it," they shouted in unison and then looked at each other before laughing together. As they did this both of their spirit pressure dropped drastically, making the others who had trouble moving able to once again. This is the scene Takato and Tatsuki came to. They sweat drop as they watched the Moon siblings laugh hysterically and looked around to see both Jinta and Ururu smiling at them. When they tried to look for Urahara they found that he had disappeared. "Hey, where Urahara-san go to?" Takato asked, and no sooner as he asked this Urahara reappeared with 2 digivices and crest with tags in his hands. The first digivice IC was red and white and the crest was red. The engraving was in white and had a picture of a star. The second digivice was in purple and white and the crest was purple. The engraving on the crest was a plain dark circle with 2 black stars over it. Urahara gave the first digivice and crest over to Tatsuki, who stared at in confusion. "This Tatsuki is your digivice IC and your crest of virtue. If you look at your digivice you would be able to see your partner Digimon, who is soundly sleeping inside of it. Just to warn you, he will try to fight you first chance he gets to prove if you're worthy to be his partner," he explained as he walked over to Naruto and handed the other digivice to him along with the crest. "Here, this is for Raven when you get to her universe," he explained to Naruto as he put his hand into his robe and pulled out a folder identical to the one Asanuma gave them before. Name: Raven. Age 16. Crest: Crest of Darkness. Current location: Jump City. Current team: Teen Titans. Members: Robin, Beast Boy, Cyborg, Starfire. Note: Raven is now a half-demon. Her abilities consists of shadow manipulation, teleportation, empathic healing powers, empathy, astral form, flight. She may appear to be a bit emotionless due to her power being connected directly to her emotions. Past life is the older sister to the princess of Saturn Hotaru. Hold on, if Raven is the older sister, how come she isn't the heir to the throne of Saturn? Naruto asked as he scratched the back of his head. I do not know that answer, Naruto. You will have to ask Raven when she regains her memories. Now I would train you on your Shinigami powers, but we don't have the time. Hurry and go back to your bodies and I will open the portal for you, Urahara ordered as he waited for the 4 teens to get back into their bodies and return. 10 minutes later the teens appeared in front of him in their normal forms. Tatsuki wore a green sweater with black pants with black and green shoes. Her crest was hanging around her neck and her digivice was safely clipped to her hip. Now before you go, I want you all to focus on your Reiatsu and picture your Zanpakuto, he instructed them. The 4 of them closed their eyes and focused on their Reiatsu. This caused the air to get extremely heavy, and lucky for Urahara he was prepared for it and let out his own Reiatsu to keep him standing. 5 minutes later they each felt themselves getting heavier. They stopped pulling on their Reiatsu and opened their eyes. They soon found out why they were heavier as their Zanpakutos appeared on their bodies. Urahara smiled and pulled out a fan with the words, "Good job," on them. The 4 guardians shook their heads at him and his weird behavior. Urahara soon stopped his goofy behavior and turned serious instantly as he felt 6 familiar and 1 unfamiliar presence preparing to open a rift in planes between Earth and Hueco Mundo. Okay, remember when you find Raven give her the digivice and her crest. Now I'll open the portal to her dimension, take care, he finished as he clapped his hands together then spread them apart creating a gateway to Rave's dimension. They each said their goodbyes and left through. Tatsuki poked her head back out and said one more thing to Urahara. Yo, when my friends come back tell them I'll see them in a few years and I'll miss them, she said, and not waiting for a reply she stepped back through the portal just as it closed. Sighing to himself he stood there for a few minutes just as another gateway appeared in the air. 7 figures jumped through and landed right in front of Urahara. One figure was dressed in a Shinigami uniform with a large sword strapped to his back wrapped in a white bandage. He had orange hair with brown eyes, his face was in a frown. Next to him was a girl with orange hair that went down to her back with a few falling over her forehead. She also had 2 blue hair clips shaped like 6-petal flowers. She wore a white and black garb. Next to her was a boy with pale white skin and had on rectangular glasses on covering his dark blue eyes. He had black hair that fell off to both sides of his face while cut short in the back. He wore a white and blue garb. Next to him was a boy with Mexican heritage. He had unruly brown hair that covered his right eye, only leaving his one brown eye visible. He wore a black high-collar vest with white pants and a pair of black shoes. Next to him was a man with red hair tied into a ponytail with a black visor over his forehead. He had black tattoo marks going over his face and down to his neck. He had yellow eyes that stared at everything with an annoyed look. He was dressed in a Shinigami uniform with his Zanpakuto strapped to his waist, on the left side. Next to him was a girl who was extremely short. She had black hair with a long bang that went down the middle of her face. Her purple eyes glared at the redhead next to her. She wore a Shinigami uniform like the other 2 and had her Zanpakuto strapped to her waist, on the left side. Next to her was a woman with light green hair with a large scar going from her forehead to her nose. She has a pink line stretching across her face horizontally right below her eyes. On the top of her head was a skull with a crack running through the left side of her mask with 4 teeth missing from it. On her back is a tattoo of a large 3. She wore a green cloak with white pants on and white shoes. Her Zanpakuto is strapped to her side. Urahara stared at the woman in shock, and then looked at the others waiting for an explanation on why there was an espada with them. Don't ask, get a boshi. We'll explain later. Right now I just want to get some sleep, the boy with orange hair said, walking towards the exit with the woman with green hair following him. Yeah, it's good to be back. I have to go and talk to Tatsuki-chan before heading home to bed as well, the girl with orange hair said happily as she thought of her friend. The boy with orange hair frowned when he thought of her because he knew he had to talk to her as well. When Urahara heard her name being mentioned he thought now was the best time in telling them about Tatsuki's message. Kurosaki-san, Orihime-san, I have something I have to tell you about your friend, he spoke seriously, catching everyone off guard except the woman with lime hair, whom stared on with an impassive look, but with hidden curiosity in her eyes. What about her, Urahara? Kurosaki asked with a deepening frown on his face. He had a gut feeling that he wasn't going to like what he was about here. He turned his attention to the orange-haired girl, whom also had a frown on her face. Inoue, he thought as he waited for Urahara to say what he had to say about Tatsuki. Tatsuki, you won't be seeing her for about 4 years. She told me to tell you that she'll see you in a few years and that she'll miss you, he told them with a serious look on his face. The two along with the boy with brown hair, the boy with black hair, and the girl with black hair stared at him in shock. What do you mean, 4 years, Urahara-san? The boy with glasses asked with a frown on his face. Ishida-san, it's exactly like I said, in 4 years she will return. During that time I want you all to train hard, because in a few years you all will be facing something much worse than the Espada and Aizen, he told them. What does all this has to do with Tatsuki-chan? Inoue asked with fear in her voice when she thought of the Espada besides the one next to her and Aizen. It has everything to do with Tatsuki. What does it has to do with her? The man with red hair said while looking at Urahara with a critical eye. Tell me, Renji, Rukia. Have you heard of beings known as guardians? Both Renji and Rukia shook their heads, but the woman with green hair spoke up. I have. It is said that there exist different universes, and in those different universes there are 7 main ones, but I'm not sure. Anyway, for each universe there is a being known as a guardian, and each guardian protects his or her own universe from any major threat the people from their universe wouldn't be able to handle, she explained, earning shocked looks from everyone around. And how do you know this, Ems? Urahara trailed off, waiting for her to fill in the blank. Narirutu Odoroshuvenku, but you can call me Naruto for short, she said calmly with a smirk on her face. So can you tell me how you came across this information, Naru-san? Urahara asked, narrowing his eyes in suspension. I've been dead for a long time, Getaboshi. I came across this information years ago from a friend, she said with a sad smile on her face. Knowing what that look means, he decides not to push it any further and would just talk to her later about it. He turns his attention back to the others. Wait, what does this guardian stuff have to do with Tatsuki? Kurosaki asked with a confused look, making everyone stare at him in disbelief. Ichigo, you really are an idiot, the boy with the glasses said, earning a glare from Ichigo. What did you just say, Ishida? Ichigo said as he walked over to Ishida, preparing to knock him down a few pegs. If you were paying attention, Ichigo, you would know that Arasawa-san is a guardian for our dimension, he explained, earning an, oh, look from Ichigo. Exactly as Ishida-san had said, Tatsuki-san is a guardian. Tatsuki left with 3 other guardians and are on their way to get their 5th member. Now Sato-san and Orihime-san, I will be training you for the next 4 years to have you prepared for when she returns. Kurosaki-san, you're welcome to join us as well if you want, that is, Urahara said as he stared at the 3 of them. Both Sato and Orihime nodded their heads yes, while Ichigo scratched his head in annoyance and reluctantly nodded his head as well. He turned his attention to the others, waiting for what they were going to do. Renji and I are going to report to Soul Society. While there we'll train, and we plan on returning in a few days, if we can, Rukia said as she said her goodbyes, then opened a gateway to Soul Society and stepping through it with Renji following behind her. I'll stay here as well. I need to get used to my body again, and I'll also be watching over Ichigo's training as well, Naru said as she walked to another clearing. Urahara told them to follow him upstairs. Along the way, Orihime had a single thought running through her head. Please be safe, Tatsuki-chan. Naru was sitting cross-legged on a rock staring at nothing with one thought also running through her head. I wonder how my 2 daughters are doing. Titan's universe. The 4 guardians stepped through the portal along with the 1 Digimon trailing behind them. They appeared in a large city and saw that a little distance away was a building shaped like a giant T on an island. Takato had Guilmon evolve back to Gigamon so he could carry him around and not draw attention onto them. Even though Takato did this, they still had people staring at them due to them carrying their Zanpakuto around out in the open. They just ignored the stares and headed straight for Titan's tower, completely unaware of the pair of yellow eyes following them. Titan's tower. A teenage girl floated in the air with her legs crossed, chanting words so she can get into her meditative state. She had purple hair that went down to her shoulders with bluish-purple eyes, which gave life to her light gray skin. She wore a black leotard with a blue cloak over it. On her waist was a golden chain belt, on her wrist were 2 blue wristbands, and she wore a pair of blue boots. In her mind she saw flashes of people and events that had once happened on a planet that looked like Saturn. She saw herself yelling at a woman with long purple hair with black eyes wearing a purple gown and a pair of purple high-heel shoes. She was wearing the same purple gown only with black low-heel shoes. Standing next to the woman was a girl in the same gown as the other 2 only with black hair with purple highlights in them with purple high-heel shoes. The girl had a small frown on her face as she stared at Raven and the woman argues back and forth. She watched as they argued over who was going to be the next heir to the throne. She heard herself yelling about how she didn't want to take the throne, while the woman who happens to be her mother shouting at her how it's her duty to take it. Raven felt herself getting angry as she watched everything happen. That's when she lost control of her powers and accidentally destroyed the windows behind her. She snapped out of her mediated state and turned around to look at the damage she did. She felt the other titans walk up over to her. She sighed knowing that they were going to bug her. "Raven, are you alright?" Robin asked as he eyed her. Raven felt the concern coming off of him, but she also felt something else that she had been feeling from the others even though they tried their best to hide it. Fear. She knew why they feared her, she understood completely. If she was them she would be afraid of her also. They were afraid because of Raven's anger and rage. She almost killed a few innocent people because of it, a few days ago and almost turned on them soon after. She always been able to keep her emotions in check, but ever since she began having the visions she found it harder for her to keep them in check. She shook her head a bit to clear it before asking Robin's question. "I'm all right, Robin," she spoke in monotone. "Are you sure, friend Raven?" Starfire asked as she floated around to see if she really was. "Yes, Star, I'm fine," she said again in monotone, but let a small smile grace her face. "Are you sure? Because lately you have been flying off the deep end," Beast Boy said as he stared at Raven in disbelief. He then hid behind Cyborg when she glared at him unknowingly, having her eyes flash red for a brief second. Robin saw this and narrowed his eyes at her. Before he could talk to her again, the alarms went off. They all rushed to the front where TV was, while Robin grabbed the remote and changed the channel to a map of the city. It showed that downtown was covered in a giant red area. Knowing what this means, they all rushed downtown to fix the problem. With the Guardians were all walking through the city heading for Titan's Tower when a woman appeared in front of them. She had long black hair that reached down to her back with stunning red eyes which looked beautiful on her pale white skin. She wore a black dress that showed off her shoulders and well-developed breast. Right above her breast was a red symbol that none of the Guardians recognized. She wore a pair of black high-heel boots. She grinned a sadistic smile at the four Guardians, making them wary of her appearance. "I was wondering when you four would show up," the woman purred while locking eyes with Naruto, making him blush a bit. "Who are you and how you know about us?" Tatsuki questioned, and then Gigamon began moving around in Takato's arms uncontrollably. "What's wrong, Gigamon?" Takato asked, concerned for his little friend. "I smell a Digimon," Gigamon said in a very high tone. The others looked at the Digimon, then at the woman, who just smirked in response. "You can call me Lust, one of the 7 children of chaos. The Digimon your little runt smell are Death Meramon, Skull Greymon, and my personal favorite High Andromon," she said as she pointed her finger behind her where there was 2 Ultimate and 1 Mega Digimon destroying the city. The others gasped in shock and Gigamon evolved back into his rookie form. "Why are you doing this?" Usagi asked as she grabbed her Digivice from her waist along with Tatsuki, Naruto, and Takato. "I'm going to destroy you and the girl Raven. Once I do, then the master won't have any trouble with conquering this and every other universe," she said with a smirk as she jumped away right when a blue energy blast hit at the spot she was previously at. The group turned their heads to see 5 teenagers rushing towards the area. The Guardians recognized them as the Titans. They looked up at the sky to see the girl they needed. Taking this time to their advantage, Naruto and Usagi called out their Digimon from their Digivices, while Takato pulled out a card and focused on it, turning it into a blue card. Tatsuki looked confused at what to do and turned towards the others. She saw them push a button and their Digimon appeared out of it. Tatsuki did the same, and when she did, an orange dinosaur that was half her height with red training bracers on appeared. The dinosaur sniffed the air a few times before a big toothy smirk appeared on his face. "So you're my partner. I'll allow you to fight with me just this once," the dinosaur spoke while never turning to face her. "Just this once?" she asked, confused. "Yes, we still haven't had our fight yet," he said as he turned to her so she could see his green eyes and gave her a smirk. She smirked back and felt something new inside of her. She knew what she had to say and how to make her partner evolve into the next level. Tatsuki turned to the others and saw a fox and a cat with no legs. "So before we get started, what's your name?" "The name's Agumon," he said as he charged past Lust and straight towards the rampaging Digimon. Tatsuki felt the power from earlier flow through her and held out her hand. As red fiery data appeared in it, she called the first words that came to mind. "Digi Soul Charge." Agumon digivolved to. Agumon was surrounded in a bright light and everyone there waited to see what was going to happen. When the light died down, there stood a giant orange T-Rex with a brown spiky helmet on. It had markings on the sides of his helmet and arms, a well-defined chest, and different body markings. Geogreymon! Geogreymon roared. The others stared in shock and Takato pulled out his D-Arc to get data on this new Digimon. Geogreymon Vaccine Dinosaur Digimon Attacks, Mega Flame, Mega Burst, Horn Impulse. Whoa, this Digimon is way different from the Greymon from the TV show, Takato muttered under his breath. He then pointed it at the other 3 Digimon to get information on them as well. Skull Greymon Virus Undead Digimon Attacks, Ground Zero Modified, Curse Breath. Death Meramon Data Flame Digimon Attacks, Heavy Metal Fire, Heat Chain. High Androman Vaccine Cyborg Digimon Attacks, Atomic Ray, Copy Paste. Not wasting any more time, Takato swiped the blue card through his D-Arc. Digimodify Matrix Digivolution Activate, Guilmon Matrix Digivolve 2. Guilmon was engulfed in a bright light. As the light died down, a giant cyborg dinosaur Digimon. He had giant blades on his arms. He had black designs all over his body and the digital hazard symbol on his armor. War Growlman. Dude, that's one big dinosaur, Beast Boy said with wide eyes. Robin looked at the Guardians with narrowed eyes and the woman with a glare before charging at her with his bow staff extended. Lust, seeing this, smirked as she raised her index finger at him. Robin continued to rush at Lust, preparing to strike her down, when her finger extended and pierced right through his staff, snapping it in half. Robin flipped away from her and tried fighting her with hand-to-hand combat. As he was doing this, the other Titans made their way over to the Guardians. Who are you people and why are you here? Raven asked in monotone, but with a slight edge to it. Naruto and Usagi turned to her, before giving a big smile to each other. Raven and the other Titans stared at them, confused at their response to Raven's question. Whenever Raven talked to Beast Boy like that, he would usually go and hide behind something. These two are crazy, Beast Boy thought with a sweat drop. Good, now we don't have to look for you, Naruto said as he turned to Raven and gave her a big smile. Raven felt a little discomfort standing by the 2 Moon siblings. Well, what do you want? We need you to come with us. I'm not going anywhere. If you don't come, your world will be destroyed. Is that a threat? Raven asked, narrowing her eyes. No, but it will happen, Naruto said before looking at Renamon and nodding his head towards her. Taking this as her cue, she rushed off towards where Skull Greymon was fighting Geogreymon. Naruto raised his hand and it was engulfed in orange fiery data. He placed it on his Digivice burst and Renamon was engulfed in a bright light. Digi Soul Charge, Naruto shouted throughout the battlefield. Renamon Digivolve 2. The others stopped fighting to see what was happening. Takato had a pretty good idea what Renamon was going to evolve to, but what he saw shocked him. When the light died down, there stood Renamon in her champion form. She looked exactly like Kyubimon, except she was purple in fur and she had orange flame feet and orange flame tips on her tail. Yukomon. Takato quickly aimed his D-Arc over at Yukomon to get some data on her. Yukomon data: Bewitching Beast Digimon Attacks, Evil Flame Dragon, Flame Ball, Hell's Fire. Naruto ran forward and hopped on Yukomon. They both ran to death. Meramon was destroying the city. Usagi turned to look at the Titans before focusing on Raven. We won't be able to save your dimension and the others without your help, Raven, Usagi said, seriously losing the innocent girl act. She glared at the girl before turning her attention to Niaromon, whom just evolved into Salamon. Ready, Salamon? Usagi asked with a smirk on her face. Salamon smirked also before nodding her head. Suddenly Usagi was covered in a pink aura with gold trims around it. Her crest shined brightly under her clothes. Digi-Soul, full charge, Usagi shouted as Salamon was engulfed in a bright light. Salamon Digivolve 2, Purity Anjuamon, where Salamon once stood, now stood Purity Anjuamon, completely restored and ready for battle. Usagi stared at Raven for one last second before rushing off to battle with her Digimon flying above her. Cyborg, snapping out of his shock, took command. Starfire, you go and help Robin against the creepy lady, he told her. She nodded her head and flew off to help Robin. B. I want you to go and help the monsters fight the other monsters. Beast Boy nodded his head, then transformed into a hawk and flew off to where Geogreymon and Skull Greymon were fighting. Raven, stay behind and guard these two in case anybody decides to do a sneak attack, while I go and aid that fox-riding boy, he commanded as he changed his arm into his sonic cannon and ran off. Raven slightly glared at his retreating form, but complies with his orders. Takato stares at her as she stays and guards them. Raven feels his eyes on her and quickly becomes irritated. Why do you keep staring at me? She asked as she felt her anger rising once again. Just wondering why you don't want to come and save the world and the other worlds with us. I don't need to. If anything that we couldn't handle here, then the Justice League could. So why would I need to come and help you save the universe? From what I can tell, even if the Justice League were to help defend this world, they would never be able to match up to the ultimate chaos. So tell me, what's your real reason for not wanting to come? Are you afraid of something? He asked with a frown on his face, as he was suddenly thrown back a few feet. He looked up weakly to see War Growlman lying on the ground. Raven and Tatsuki rushed to his side asking if he was okay. I'm fine, nothing too serious, he said as he rubbed the area where his ribs were at. Hey kid, what the hell just happened? Tatsuki asked as she turned her eyes from Geogreymon for a second. War Growlman and I are connected. Whatever pain he feels, I feel as well, he said a little weakly. Raven frowns and turns her attention back to the battle. With Geogreymon, Purity Anjuamon, Usagi, and Beast Boy. Mega Flame. Geogreymon shouted as he shot a steady stream of flames from his mouth at Skullgreymon, whom dodged out the way in time only having its arm caught in the blast. Ground Zero. Skullgreymon cried. He shot the missile that was on his back at Geogreymon, whom retaliated with another, Mega Flame, cancelling out the attack. Geogreymon rushes towards Skullgreymon and attempts to hit it with its tail, but Skullgreymon grabs it with its claw. He then tosses Geogreymon into a building, then fire a Ground Zero at him. The attack hits him head-on, making Geogreymon evolve back into Agumon. Agumon glared at Skullgreymon from his place on the ground. Skullgreymon smirked before firing another Ground Zero at the defeated Agumon. Agumon stared at the missile head-on, and right when he was prepared for the end, Purity Anjuamon appeared in front of him with her celestial blade in her hand. She glared at the oversized missile before raising her sword in the air. The sword shined a bright white before she slashed it down, creating a rip through dimensions. Dimensional Cutter. She cried as the missile headed straight into the rip and vanished from reality. Usagi appeared behind Skullgreymon before focusing on her chakra and going through some seals. Beast Boy watched from above, curious at what she was going to do, and was surprised at what happened. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu. Usagi shouted as she shot a giant fireball at the surprised Skullgreymon, whom was hit with the attack head-on, engulfing him in it. Usagi smiled, thinking she had finished it, but was surprised when Skullgreymon just calmly walked out of the fire like it was nothing. Beast Boy, taking this as a chance to attack, changed into a whale and fell on top of Skullgreymon. Agumon, Usagi, and Purity Anjuamon watched with wide eyes and a sweat drop at what the green boy just did. Beast Boy was smiling, thinking it was over, and was surprised when he felt himself being lifted in the air. He looked down and saw Skullgreymon lifting him up, and then he suddenly felt himself being thrown through the air. He changed back into a hawk and charged at the crazed Digimon, picking at it with his beak. Tatsuki ran from her place by Takato and Raven to see how Agumon was faring. Purity Anjuamon flew high into the air, preparing to attack again, while Usagi prepared to do another jutsu she learned personally from her Ododo. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Usagi shouted as she put her hands in a cross seal and 10 clones appeared. This sent shock through the entire battlefield. The only ones who weren't shocked were Usagi herself, Naruto, Purity Anjuamon, and Yukomon. All 11 Usagis went through the same seals she went through before preparing to finish off Skullgreymon. Purity Anjuamon watched this with a smirk on her face, before she too prepared to attack with one of her own attacks. Usagi looked up and saw Beast Boy still trying to poke Skullgreymon with his beak, and she sweat dropped. Beast Boy, move out the way, she shouted. Beast Boy looked at her before nodding his head and flew a safe distance away, but close enough in case he was still needed in battle. Usagi looked at Purity Anjuamon and opened up a mental link with her. Purity Anjuamon, are you ready to finish this? Of course. He's pretty boring and weak. I would rather fight that girl and her Renamon again. Oh, does my partner have a crush? Purity Anjuamon didn't reply back, making Usagi do a silent cheer to herself. She would tease her about that later, but for now she had a Digimon to delete. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu, all 11 Usagis shouted, as they all shot a giant fireball at Skullgreymon, making him scream in pain. Purity Anjuamon took this as her time to attack the almost deleted Digimon. Celestial Arrow. Purity Anjuamon cried as she shot an arrow made out of pure energy, striking Skullgreymon on his skull. The Digimon continued to scream in pain as he slowly deleted until there was nothing left of him. Purity Anjuamon evolved back into Gatomon and walked over to Usagi, whom was breathing heavily after using so much of her chakra. Hey, you alright, Usagi? Yeah, just used too much of my chakra at once. Just give me a few minutes and then we can fight again, she said as she sat down against a building and pulled out a rice ball from her coat. She happily munched away, ignoring everything else around her. She saw Gatomon staring at her, so she grabbed another rice ball from her coat and gave it to her. Gatomon thanked her and ate it as she regained some of her strength. Tatsuki watched all this with a sweat drop, as she placed Agumon back into the Digivice. She stared at him and made a promise to herself to get stronger, so her partner wouldn't get so easily beaten next time. Agumon, once you get healed, we're going to have our match. Got it, and you better put up a good fight. Don't worry, I will, she said as she put her back up against the side of a building and sighed to herself. Beast Boy watched all this from up above and decided to go regroup with Raven. With Robin and Starfire, Robin let off a barrage of punches and kicks at Lust, whom easily dodged every blow with a smirk on her face. This only made Robin more furious as he tried to hit her with more power and speed than before, but it was no use. He did a few black flips to gain some distance between the two of them. Who are you and what's your purpose for being here? Robin integrated as he pulled out some explosives from his utility belt. I already answered that question, but I don't mind repeating myself. I'm Lust, one of the 7 children of Chaos. The reason why I'm here is to test the strength of the Guardians. Guardians. Yes, Guardians. For each dimension there is one Guardian who protects and guards it. My master needs them out of the way so he can rule this and every other dimension out there. I don't know who these Guardians are, nor do I care, but I will not allow you or your master do as you please, he said as he threw his explosives at Lust, whom just stood there with her smirk never leaving her face. The explosives exploded as they made contact with Lust as she was covered in a black cloud. Starfire appeared next to Robin and smiled happily, thinking he had won. That all stopped when they heard Lust's voice coming from the cloud of smoke. You don't have the power to defeat me or my master. Only the ones with the title Guardian can do that, but for your bravery I will make your death quick and painless, she said calmly as she walked out of the smoke with her arms crossed over her breast. Now then, shall we begin? With Naruto, Yukomon, and Cyborg. Heavy metal fire, Death Meramon shouted as he shot a blue fire blast of melted metal from his mouth at Yukomon, whom had dodged the attack by scaling a nearby building. Naruto hopped off her back and started going through hand seals. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto called out and 20 clones appeared into a cloud of smoke. Alright guys, charge, Naruto shouted as he was picked up by Yukomon from the air, while the clones charged Death Meramon. The Digimon saw them coming and unwrapped some chains from his body and threw it at the clones like a whip. Heat chain, he cried as he used his chain whip to destroy the clones. The original Naruto glared at the Digimon, before turning to Yukomon. Yukomon, let's fight fire with fire, Naruto said with a big smile on his face. Alright Naruto, Yukomon said in an annoyed tone and opened up her mouth where a ball of fire was gathering. Flame ball, she shouted as she launched the orange fireball from her mouth towards Death Meramon. Said Digimon easily dodged the attack, but was not prepared for the attack that slammed into his back, sending him closer to the water surrounding Titan's tower. Alright, take that you blue fire monster, Cyborg said with a smirk as he cheered to himself. Idiot, quit your cheering, we're not done yet, Naruto shouted while riding Yukomon. Cyborg glared at him for the idiot comment, before turning his attention back to the seething Digimon. Cyborg sweat dropped before firing another shot from his cannon and hitting Death Meramon directly. The Digimon just stood there with a scowl on his face before firing a heavy metal fire at Cyborg, knocking him off his feet and slamming hard into the ground. Naruto watched this with a frown before turning his attention back to Yukomon. Yukomon, I'm going to do the Kage Bunshin again, but this time you're going to be with me, got it? Naruto said and received a nod from his partner. Naruto then put his hands in the cross seal again, but this time instead of just using his chakra he drew on some of Yukomon's as well. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he shouted as 5 Naruto and Yukomon clones appeared in a cloud of smoke. Yukomon, now attack with your strongest attack and I'll give it more power, Naruto said as he and the other Naruto went through some hand seals and Yukomon and her clones prepared their strongest attack. They each opened their mouths and a dark ball of fire appeared in them. Hell's fire, the Yukomon shouted as they unleashed a large stream of dark fire from their mouths towards Death Meramon just as Naruto and his clones finished their seals. Futon. Daidappa, all 6 of the Naruto shouted as they clapped their hands and released a powerful gust of wind from them and connected with Yukomon's Hell's fire attack, making it increase in size and power. Death Meramon saw the attacks approaching him and he glared one last time at the duo before he was deleted. Naruto releases his jutsu and jumps off of Yukomon's back and ran towards Cyborg. Hey, you okay, Tin Man? Naruto asked as he watches Cyborg pick himself up from the ground. Yay, I'm fine. And don't call me Tin Man, Blondie, Cyborg shouted as he glared at Naruto. Sure, whatever you say, Tin Man, Naruto said, ignoring his glare and turned his attention to Yukomon, who walked up to them slowly. Naruto, Takato and War Growlman won't be able to hold off High Androman much longer. So quit your arguing with the android and let's go, Yukomon said, also ignoring Cyborg's glare. Fine, let's go, Yukomon, Naruto said as he hopped on her back and took off towards the direction they left Takato at. Yo, don't call me no android. The name's Cyborg, you stupid fox. Cyborg shouted, but Yukomon ignored him and continued her run. Cyborg muttered curses under his breath as he ran after the two. With Takato, Raven, and War Growlman. Damn it, we can't keep this up much longer, Takato said as he grabbed his D-Arc and scanned another hyperspeed card through it, but it didn't do much for the cyborg Digimon. War Growlman was tried to grapple with High Androman, but was overpowered and was tossed into the air. High Androman then points his hand up at War Growlman as it shined a bright white color. Atomic Ray, he shouted as he fired a blast of nuclear energy at War Growlman, who dodged the attack barely, but the intensity of the attack forced him out of his ultimate form and back into his rookie form. Takato, seeing this, rushed forward and tries to capture him, but it wasn't needed as he was covered in a black aura and was gently laid on the ground. Takato turns around to see Raven's hands and eyes glowing black and thanks her before rushing towards Guilman. Guilman stares at his tamer, before weakly getting back to his feet. Guilman, are you still okay to fight? Of course, Takato, but he's too strong to fight at my current level, Guilman said seriously, and Takato nods his head at him, getting the idea. Takato then grabs his D-Arc and puts it into the sky as it shined brightly. Biomerge activate, Takato shouted as he placed his Digivice over his chest, and both he and Guilman were wrapped in red data. When the data died down, Takato and Guilman were nowhere in sight, and in their place was a Night Digimon with a red cape with the digital hazard sign on his metal chest plate and on various parts of his body. Gallantmon, he shouted using the dual voice of both Takato and Guilman. Raven watched on in awe as Gallantmon's right arm changed into a lance and charged High Androman head-on. As Gallantmon drove his lance towards High Androman's chest, but was stopped by the cyborg Digimon's metal hand. High Androman stared at Gallantmon with an impassive look, before effortlessly tossing him through 4 buildings. High Androman then pointed his hands through the holes of the building and fired another atomic ray through them, which Gallantmon saw coming once he got to his feet and summoned a shield to his left hand. The shield then began to glow, and the triangles on it began to glow one by one until they were all lit. Shield of the Just, he shouted as he fired an energy beam from his shield, and it connected with High Androman's attack. They were then locked in a power struggle, and High Androman was slowly overpowering Gallantmon's Shield of the Just attack. Inside Gallantmon, both Takato and Guilman was having a conversation while trying to overpower High Androman. Takao, why are we losing? Well, there are only 2 answers I have for that, Guilman. 1. You're still exhausted from your previous battle with High Androman. Or 2. High Androman is no normal mega-level Digimon, Takato explained, when an idea hit him. Guilman, do you think you can mode change? He asked hopefully. Sorry, Takato, I'm too tired to do mode change, Guilman said in a sad and tired voice. My, it seems like you can't hold on much longer, can you, oh great Gallantmon, Lust said as she appeared next Gallantmon, who glared at her from behind his mask. What the hell do you want? Takato said using his voice through Gallantmon. Oh, nothing, just wanted to say this before you're deleted. I hope you die a very long and painful death, weakling, she said as she disappeared in a wisp of black smoke, missing how Gallantmon's eyes flashed red. I'm not weak, Takato said as he clenched his fist inside the red sphere he was in as his planet symbol flashed on his head and his crest was shining slightly. Takatoman, are you okay? Guilman asked a little fearfully because he could feel his tamer's rage building. I'm not weak, I'm tired of being called weak, he said as memories of his past life with his sister and his family flashed through his mind and his crest shined even brighter. Guilman tried calling out to his tamer again, but Takato couldn't hear him as memories continued to flash through his mind. His older sister berates him, his mother ignoring his existence, his eldest sister and third oldest sister leaving the palace, his twin trying to confront him, his mother and sister telling him how weak he was. The memories were flowing through him like running water until he couldn't take it anymore and just screamed out in agony. Ah, I'm not weak, damn it, he shouted as he separated from Gallantmon. He looked confused before turning his attention to Gallantmon, who was still holding the Shield of the Just attack, but was slowly changing from red to blue. He also noticed that his D-Arc was also changing into a different form. He recognized it as one of the Digivices that Naruto, Tatsuki, and Usagi carried. But his was dark blue and sky blue in color instead of once color and black. He then turns back to Gallantmon, who also changed and had glowing red eyes. Gone was his red cape and in its place was a blue one. His chrome Digizoid metal changed into black version of itself and his once red dinosaur helmet changed into a dark blue version of itself. His Aegis shield changed into a Gorgon shield and it soon lit anew. Judeka prison, the dark Digimon shouted and dark blast of energy shot out from his shield and fused with his earlier attack, easily overpowering High Androman's attack. High Androman was hit with the attack head-on, but had quickly raised both of his hands to cover his face from the attack as it engulfed him. When the blast died down, High Enderman was still standing and only had a few scratches on him and was prepared to counter-attack, but stopped when he heard his master's voice. High Enderman returned to base. "I will handle the rest here," Lust said as she walked up to the cyborg Digimon, whom nodded his head, and with a flick of her wrist High Enderman vanished in wisp of black smoke. She turned her head slightly to see the Dark Knight Digimon evolving back into his rookie form before collapsing to the ground into unconsciousness. She ignored the boy and his Digimon and walked forward towards Raven, who had watched the whole fight with impassive face on. Though she was worried she wouldn't allow her emotions to go out of control again, she felt Lust approaching her and she locked eyes with her. Lust smirked at her and slowly approached her and raised her finger at her and said one word. "Die," she said, and her finger shot out from her hand like a bullet. Raven saw the finger approaching her and just stood where she was with her face never leaving from its impassive stare. Moments before it reached her face, Lust's finger was stopped by a black aura. Raven raised her hands and Lust's finger raised and the aura slowly covered Lust's body as she too was raised into the air. Raven then raised her other hand and saw 2 buses scattered across the ground. Getting an idea, she tosses Lust into the air, releasing her from the dark aura, and points her 2 hands towards the 2 buses. "Azereth Metreon Zinthos," she says as her hands and eyes are covered in a black aura and dark energy shoots out from her hands and engulfs the 2 buses. She raises her hands and the 2 buses also raises into the air. Raven spots Lust falling back towards the ground and she quickly spreads her arms apart, making the buses mimic her movements, right before she quickly slams her hands together just as Lust lines up with the 2 buses, smashing her between the both of them, resulting in a fiery explosion. Raven watched with an impassive stare as the 2 buses fell to the ground, resulting in a large cloud of smoke to appear. She stood a little ways away from the smoke cloud because she had a feeling that Lust wasn't dead yet. She then felt a shift of movement coming from her right and was punched in her jaw, sending her crashing into a car. Groaning, Raven got to her feet a few seconds later to see who had attacked her. There stood a teenage boy around 16 in age with black spiky hair and yellow eyes with a sadistic smirk on his face. He had on a white shirt with the words, "Destroyer of Realms" in red on the front of his shirt with a black vest over it. He wore slightly black baggy pants with black combat boots on. He had on black fingerless gloves on with metal spikes on his left glove. He then turned his head to the dust cloud to see Lust walking out of it with a scowl on her face. "What are you doing here, Arashi Teme?" she sneered as she walked up to him with her arms crossed over her breast. Arashi gave her a lazy eye before turning to the disgruntled Raven. "Oh, it seems that Haim-sama has gotten back to her feet," Arashi said in mock concern. "What did you call me?" Raven sneered as she fought to keep her emotions under control. She didn't know why she was letting this guy get to her, but when he had called her that name, it really pissed her off for some unknown reason. "It seems like your memory hasn't returned yet, Haim-sama," Arashi said as he put his finger into his ear with an annoyed look on his face. "What are you talking about?" she asked as her eyes flashed red for a brief second after being called Haim-sama again. Arashi saw this and chuckled to himself. "I wonder who has the worst temper, Haim here or the Mars Prince?" he thought with a gleam in his eye. "You don't remember, do you, Haim-sama?" he said, pushing her anger to greater heights. "Allow me to tell you a little story. There once was a royal family that lived on a planet called Saturn. The queen on the planet had 2 darling daughters who both had enough power to wipe out the entire solar system. The eldest daughter grew up pretty much alone and had people always avoiding her because how dangerous she was supposed to be. The girl would always have an emotional mask on to hide her pain as she couldn't talk to anyone." Here he paused because he felt a malicious aura coming from Raven. He smiled a crazed smile before continuing his story. Her mother tried to get her to open up, but soon found out the hard way by the girl's 5th birthday when her powers had finally awaked. The girl had to keep her emotions under control because if she didn't, her power would run wild and she may had accidentally killed someone like she had done a few times before. He paused again to see that Raven's eyes shift from 2 purple ones to 4 red menacing ones. "Shut up," she growled as her body lengthens to about 10 feet into the air. "Sorry, Haim-sama. I'm not finished with the story yet," he said as if scolding a child. "Now where were we? Oh yeah, I remember now. At her 5th birthday she received many presents that day and she was feeling extremely happy. What she didn't know was that her power would awake that day, and you can probably guess what had happened. If you hadn't guesses it, she ended up killing about 4 of the children there due to her not keeping her emotions in check. After that fateful day all the children would avoid her and she became more withdrawn as the years passed. Her sister spoke with her as much as she could, but she spent her time mostly training with her mother. Then a few months after her 10th birthday she met a boy who would later become her greatest friend, but would also be the boy who ended her life by the time she turned 17. What the girl didn't know about the boy was that the only reason why he became her friend in the first place was because he was ordered by his family to befriend the girl. The boy, after 7 years of being her friend, knocked her out and dragged her to the dungeons of his palace, where she would be tortured and killed in the slowest way possible. The boy really did enjoy his job just as much as he enjoyed having sex. When the girl died, her body was shipped back to her castle and a few people mourned her death. Then a few months later her sister was also killed, and then the destruction of the Moon, Earth, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto and Saturn kingdoms happened, resulting in the end of the Silver Millennium. Though all of those who were in the royal family on each planet were reborn, except a few of the planet's kings, queens and the Guardian of Time. And that is the end of my story. Great story, isn't it, Haim-sama? He said with a laugh and ducked under a claw strike from the demonized raven. I told you to shut up. Now you will die, she snarled maniacally as she shot her hand at him, and a dark claw of energy shot out from her hands. Thousands of shadow tentacles came out from under her cloak and flew directly at Arashi, whom just gave of a sadistic smirk at her actions. The tentacles all followed his movements as if he had a homing beacon on him. A few finally caught him and trapped his movements by capturing his legs. The rest of the tentacles wraps around his body, completely immobilizing him. She then raises her hands as a dark aura surrounds them and quickly slams her hands towards the ground. Arashi's eyes widen in slight fear before he is quickly slammed into the ground, resulting in a small crater. I'm not done yet, Rave sneered with a frown on her face. She then repeatedly slams his body into the ground for the next 5 minutes, and all the while Lust watches with an amused expression across her face until she feels her left arm being cut off. She screams and sees a dark smile on the face of Takato. His eyes were red and his 2 Zanpakutos were in his hands, radiating a dark red color. I'm going to end your existence for causing my partner harm, he said with his eyes shined an eerie red. He then begins to slash at Lust multiple times, but she dodges most of his strikes. She jumps away from him and summons a ball of dark energy to her right hand and fires it at him. The attack rams into Takato's chest, knocking him to his feet. He places his hand over his chest and feels a wet substance on it. He brings it to his face and sees that it's his blood. Takato looks down at the wound and notices a hole in his shirt and that he was bleeding fiercely from his wound. He let loose a bitter chuckle before glaring at Lust one last time before passing out. Lust walks up to him preparing to finish him off when she feels a large amount of heat approaching her. She looks up and smirks a bit, before she turns around and rushes towards Arashi, just as she escapes 2 giant fireballs that would have hit her dead on if she hadn't ran away. She sprints at Arashi and raises her hands, and her finger pierces through the tentacles holding Arashi. Lust quickly catches Arashi moments before he hits the ground and jumps away from the gathered guardians and the demonized raven. Raven slowly begins to revert back into her normal form and shakes her head lightly before glaring darkly at Arashi. He smirks at her, barely on the brink of unconsciousness, and says one last thing before passing out from blood loss. I'll make sure to kill you, like I have done before, he says weakly with an arrogant smirk on his face before finally passing out. Guardians, don't think this is our true strength. We only came here to test your strengths, and I must say I am quite impressed, but you're going to have to be 1,000 times stronger if you ever want to match up against us. Well, I guess this is farewell, for now, Lust said as she and Arashi vanishes in a wisp of black smoke. Naruto walks up to the group with Robin on his back. Yukomon wasn't far behind him and had Starfire, Takato and his partner on her back. Cyborg walks up slowly with Beast Boy by his side and had a forlorn look on his face. Tatsuki walks up with a frown on her face and glances towards Raven with an unreadable expression. Usagi lands right next to Raven with Gatomon on her shoulders. Raven turns her head towards her and looks at the damage to the city and her friends before sighing. Come with me to the tower. There we can put everyone in the medical center and where we will talk, Raven said as her body gives off a tense and dangerous aura. Usagi nods her head and gestures the others to follow. 2 hours later, the Titans, fully healed, sat around a table with the Guardians, who had just finished their explanation on why they needed Raven to come with them. Robin had an impassive face, Starfire looked confused, Cyborg had an eyebrow raised, Raven was just quiet, and Beast Boy had a skeptical expression on his face. So you expect us to believe that Raven here, Beast Boy said, pointing towards Raven, whom was glaring at him, is a princess from Saturn, and she was originally from a whole different dimension, he said with his face still skeptical. In case you've forgotten, Beast Boy, Azarath is from another dimension and I am from Azarath, Raven said with a heavy frown on her face. Beast Boy looks at her with raised eyebrow before realization dawns on him and he gives a sheepish smile. Sorry about that, Raven. But still, he would have continued, but Robin interrupts him. That's enough, Beast Boy. I have to admit that their story is pretty unbelievable, Robin said with a straight face, but then changed it into a smirk a second later. But we've also been against some pretty unbelievable things ourselves. So this situation doesn't make it any different. If you want to leave Raven then you may. But know that you won't be the only one training during your 4 years away, Robin said with a nod of his head. Raven stared at his for a few minutes before giving him a very small, almost unnoticeable smile. Right, I guess I should start packing, Raven said as she stood up from her seat and walked off towards her room with Usagi following after her. Why is Usagi following friend Raven? Starfire asked as she watched Usagi follow Raven. Takato shrugged his shoulders and Tatsuki mimicked his action. Naruto had a thoughtful look on his face before answering. Well, Usagi has been reading Ero Sennin's books so she could try to, was all Naruto got to say before he was kicked in the head by Renamon. The others sweat drop at this and wondered where Renamon came from. By the looks on your face you're probably wondering, why I kicked him and where I came from, correct? Renamon said with her arms crossed sitting on Naruto's prone form. The others nodded at her question and Naruto was unconscious so he couldn't say anything. I'll answer your second question first. I can travel between dimensions instantly, which enables me to appear whenever I am called or when I just feel like showing up. To answer your first question, Naruto was suggesting that Usagi and Raven were going to bond with each other or in your case have sex with each other, Renamon said with a light blush on her cheeks. A few seconds later, after letting the information they just heard absorb into their minds, all the guys in the room passed out with perverted grins on their faces. Renamon shook her head before grabbing Naruto and phasing out of existence to have a private talk with him. Tatsuki shook her head and started cursing about having to travel with perverts. Starfire was trying to get the images of both Raven and Usagi in a very sexual embrace. She gave up a few minutes later and just grabbed a bottle of mustard and began drinking it. 10 minutes later both Raven and Usagi came into the room with Raven carrying a scroll in her hand. Tatsuki saw them walk into the room and motioned them over. So are you all ready to go? She asked with a yawn. Yes, we should go now. Usagi then looked around to see no one else in the room. Tatsuki-san, where is everyone? Tatsuki shook her head and asked if Raven could take them into the city. She nodded her head and they were engulfed by a black dome that changed into a giant black shadow raven that flew through the walls and flew towards the city. They landed in front of a pizza restaurant and Tatsuki explained what had happened earlier. Usagi was blushing at what Naruto had said about her and Raven didn't think anything of it, but had also had a very small blush on her cheeks. And once the others awoken from their fantasies they went searching for the two of them, Tatsuki said with a small frown on her face. Raven, Usagi, do either of you sense them anywhere? Tatsuki asked with a raised eyebrow because she didn't know if they could sense the others' presence or not. Well, Takato, Robin, Cyborg, Beast Boy and Starfire are right behind us eating pizza, Raven said as she watched them stuff their faces with pizza and Starfire with a bottle of mustard. I'll grab them once they finish with their meal, Raven said with slightly disgusted tone. Alright, and I'll walk to this direction because this is where I feel Naruto's chakra coming from, Usagi said as she began walking towards the casino district of the city. Tatsuki followed behind her and Raven went and talked to the others. With Naruto. Yes, I win again, a man who looked exactly like Naruto shouted as he grabbed another bucket and began filling it up with the casino coins. Next to the man were 4 buckets filled with gold coins and he had a huge smile on his face. He grabbed 2 buckets with little difficulty and called a name. Renamon, he said softly, and his Digimon appeared next to him, her blue eyes glaring daggers at him. Can you grab the other 3 buckets for me and walk with me to exchange these coins for some cash, he said with a big smile on his face, ignoring Renamon's glare. She shook her head and grabbed 2 of the buckets with her claws and the last one with her tail and followed him to exchange his casino coins for money. 10 minutes later they both exited the casino and Naruto dropped his henge then walked right into Usagi was staring at him with a raised eyebrow. Usagi, what are you doing here? Naruto asked nervously, keeping his 3 envelopes full of money in his pockets. Oh, just looking for you. So are you going to tell me why you were in a casino in a henge? She asked in a very sweet voice. No reason. Well, got to go to the store to buy somethings. By Usagi, Tatsuki. Naruto said, running off before Usagi could cause some damage to his body. She turns her head to Renamon with a questioning look. He was gambling and he didn't want you or anybody else to know about it, she said, shaking her head. What she didn't tell him was that she was gambling herself and had the same amount of luck as he did, but stopped after her 5th winning hand in her game of blackjack. Fine, just tell him to meet us in front of the pizza restaurant when he gets done with his business, Tatsuki said with a wave of her hand as she began walking back to the restaurant. Usagi shook her head and pulled out an Icha Icha Paradise Volume 3 fee book from her coat pocket and followed Tatsuki, letting out a perverted giggle every now and then, making Tatsuki sweat drop at her while muttering about traveling with a bunch of perverts. Hour later, outside the pizza restaurant, the Guardians and the Titans stood outside the pizza restaurant preparing to go their separate ways. I'll miss you, fried Raven, Starfire wailed as she gave a bone-crushing hug to Raven as she struggled to breathe. Can't breathe, Star, she wheezed as she tries to pry Starfire off of him. Luckily for her, Robin and Cyborg pried her off of her. Don't forget about us, Raven, Cyborg said with a sad smile. Like I could forget about you, odd bunch of people, Raven said with a small smirk on her face. Hey, you were the oddest of us all, Beast Boy shouted at her and then ran up to her hug her, but was stopped by Raven as she trapped him with her powers. No more hugging. I understand, Beast Boy. I'll see you all again soon, she spoke in monotone. She then sighed to herself when she saw his sad look and gave him a brief hug before releasing him a second later. Beast Boy was stunned that Raven had actually hugged him and gave her a big smile a second later. Robin walked up to her, held out his hand to her, which she gratefully took. We'll definitely meet again, Raven. Just so you know, you'll always be one of the Titans, he said, giving her a small smile before walking back to the others. Gadaman opened a portal to the Guardian's realm and waited for the others to walk through. See y'all later, Tin Man, Robin, Starfire, and Beast Boy. It's been fun while it lasted, Naruto shouted, walking through the portal with Renamon by his side. Bye guys, thanks for the pizza, hope we see you again, Takato said with a smile on his face, walking through the portal. Bye and take care, Tatsuki said with a smile as she walked through the portal. Bye, and we'll take good care of Raven for you guys, Usagi said as she grabbed Raven's hand and walked through the portal with Gadaman not far behind. The portal then closed, leaving behind 4 distraught Titians. Guardian Realm. The 5 Guardians came out of the portal to see Jiraiya and Queen Selena T waiting for them. Yo Ero Senin, mother, Naruto said with a wave and found himself face first on the ground a second later. Grandpa, mother, we have the Prince of Mars, Princess of Jupiter and the Princess of Saturn with us, she said as she pointed to each person as she called their names. Nice to see you again, children, and my have you all grown, Selena T said with a small gentle smile on her face. Nice to meet you too, Takato said nervously as he bowed to her slightly. Tatsuki and Raven both followed his gesture. No need to bow to me, young ones, she said, smiling a small gentle smile at them. Right now, to get down to business, Jiraiya said as he instantly went serious. Follow me to the briefing room, he said as he walked down the halls of the base. After many twists and turns they arrived in a room where many different mirrors were at. Naruto recognized one that looked like the Hokage's office. Tatsuki saw one that looked like her school. Usagi looked at one where she saw the Hikawa Shrine. Takato saw Shinjuku Park through one mirror and Raven saw Titan's Tower through another. What's the deal with the weird mirrors? Tatsuki said as she sat down in one of the chairs that were placed around a long and wide rectangle table. These mirrors allow us to travel between dimensions. They also allow us to watch the separate worlds all at one time from these mirrors, Jiraiya explained as he waved his hands over the mirror where it showed Konoha and waved his hand over it, making a change to one of the training grounds. Naruto saw a girl who he recognizes as Hinata, and she was ruthlessly striking a log with her bloody palms. The strange thing about was that there was no tears in her eyes and she was covered in a dark aura. Her pale eyes were flashing between purple and yellow frequently. Her blue hair that now reached down to her shoulders was flicking to the color black. Jiraiya, what's happening with Hinata? Naruto said in a very serious tone. His tone and the fact that he called Jiraiya by his name sent shock through everyone in the room except Queen Selena T, Tatsuki, and Raven, the latter too, because they didn't really know him, and the former because she was his mother and knew all about her son. I don't know, but it seems like the chaos is gathering his own soldiers, Jiraiya said with a frown on his face. But what does it want with Hinata? It looks like your friend has a lot of darkness in her heart, Naruto, Raven said as she eyed Hinata through the mirror. Hinata doesn't have any darkness in her. She's one of the nicest, sweetest, and he trailed off and blushed at what he was about to say. The others heard this and stared at him intently. Like I said, Hinata's one of the kindest people I know, Naruto said, crossing his arms with a frown as he watched the dark aura surrounding her become stronger. Naruto, things had been changing since the day you were ran out of Konoha. Naruto, Jiraiya spoke with a frown on his face. All your friends had changed, but not as much as Hinata here. She took your leaving the hardest and it had changed her for the worst. Iruka left Konoha to teach somewhere else and Tsunade became a cold Hokage with a terrible temper, he said with his frown deepening. Naruto stares into the mirror as Hinata trains before the mirror goes blank. Naruto sighs to himself and hopes nothing happens to her or any of his friends. Usagi walks to the mirror where her world was at and she saw the senshi gathered at the shrine. She calls the others over and she points out each person. The cat there is Luna, she used to be my guardian, she said with a frown, and Gadaman materialized herself from the digivice. She doesn't look so hot, Usagi. You should get a new guardian if she betrayed you like she did, she licking her claws. Selena T had a thoughtful look on her face at that and quickly left the room unnoticed. I know I should get a new guardian, she said more to herself, but shook her thoughts away. The girl with the raven hair with brownish-purple eyes is Rei, but paused in her narration when she felt a pulse of power coming from Takato. Everyone in the room turned to Takato to see that his planet symbol was flashing on his head and his eyes were flashing red. His teeth were grinding against each other and both of his Zanpakuto were pulsating. Naruto then turned his attention back to the mirror and gasped lightly, and the others turned to what he was looking at. They then saw that Rei's planet symbol was also flashing on her forehead and she was clutching her head in pain with tears coming out of her eyes. Usagi's universe. With Rei. Rei, are you alright? Minako said as she tried to comfort her friend who was holding her head in agony. She then heard her muttering words all the while clutching her head. Weakling, Oto, never be strong enough, too, kind, foolish Oto, embarrassment, family, disgrace, Anya. Oni-sama, don't go, she said as she passed out with her planet symbol still on her forehead shining a bright red. Hurry and help me get her inside, Minako shouted at the other, who immediately rushed to her side to help Rei up. Then the unthinkable happened. Makoto and Hotaru collapsed as well, clutching their heads. What the hell is going on? Haruka said as she stared at the two quivering girls. She rushed towards Hotaru and heard her saying words under her breath that came out in pants. Oni-sama, dead, pay, everyone, die, lonely, hatred, suffering, airy, pay, life, she said as she passed out from pain. Makoto got to her feet weakly, but collapsed to her knees a second later with her planet symbol flashing brightly on her forehead. Oto-sama, Imouto-san, Imouto, sorry, failed, save, forgive, me, Tatsuki, Pani, Katona Teme, will, pay, she said as she passed out as well. No, seriously, what the hell is going on? Haruka said as she picked up Hotaru and rushed her inside with Amy and Minako carrying Rei not too far behind her, while Michiru and Setsuna carried Makoto inside the shrine. Guardian Realm. While all that was going on, both Tatsuki's and Raven's planet symbols were flashing violently on their foreheads along with Takato's, and they each passed out around the same time as their siblings. Naruto and Usagi immediately rushed to the sides of their friends. Jiraiya quickly made 2 Kage Bunshin to pick up Tatsuki and Raven while he, the original, picked up Takato's body. He rushed them towards the medical bay and hooked them up to some monitors to check the fallen guardian's pulse. Everything checks okay. It seems to me that they passed out from too much memory intake, Jiraiya said with a thoughtful look on his face. What are you talking about, Ero Sennin? Naruto asked as H leaned up against the wall with his arms crossed. Usagi also had a thoughtful expression on her face before she snapped her fingers, gaining both Naruto's and Jiraiya's attention. So what you're saying is that Tatsuki, Takato, and Raven memories returned all at once and they passed out, she said while scratching the back of her head nervously. That's exactly right, Usagi-chan. You have your mother smarts, but I don't know about him though, Jiraiya said as he jabbed his thumb towards Naruto, who threw a scroll at his head. But back to matters at hand. What happened to the girls in the mirror? Naruto asked as he grabbed the envelope from his pocket and pulled out the money and started counting it. Jiraiya eyed the money in his hands and turned his eyes onto Naruto. They too had their memories returned to them. The girls and these 3 shall wake up in a few hours, Jiraiya said, walking up to Naruto slowly. Naruto, where did you get all that money from? He asked as he stared at Naruto curiously. He won it all at a casino, Usagi said as she pulled out her Icha Icha Paradise Volume 3 fee book again and began reading now that she knew her friends weren't in any danger. Usagi's universe. 4 hours later, Rei, Hotaru, and Makoto all awakened in a start. They looked at each other and then at the occupants, whom seemed to be staring at them with concern. Amy was the first to stand up and walked over to them and began giving them a checkup. She nodded to herself and asked them what happened. I remember everything now, Rei said softly with a few tears coming out of her eyes before she quickly wiped them away. I was so hard on him and he was killed a few days later, Rei said softly as she stared up at the ceiling. Who are you talking about, Rei? Minako asked as she walked over to her friend and gave her a comforting hug. I'm talking about my Otuto. He was killed, and everyone from the royal families from the Earth, Moon, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto attended his funeral a few days later. My Onisama was supposed to be the heir to the family on Mars, but she took off with my second youngest sister and left me with the responsibility. My youngest sister completely isolated herself from my mother and me. She held us in contempt over what happened to her twin, Takato. We always pushed him so hard trying to make him reach his full potential. The things we did to him were unforgivable, and I know he still hates me even to this day. I can feel his hatred even from here, Rei said as she got off her bed. The others, who heard her story, was confused and worried about Rei, all except Makoto, Setsuna and Hotaru. What are you talking about, Rei, and what brother are you speaking about? Luna asked as she walked over to her. It doesn't matter, I have to train for his arrival, she said as two swords appeared on her back in a flash of light. The others watched in awe as Rei's appearance changed into a skin-tight black bodysuit with red armor on her shoulder, shins, thighs, and stomach area. She walked out of the shrine without another word. Makoto too got to her feet, and in a flash of light Makoto's appearance also changed. She was dressed in a similar fashion as Rei, but instead of red metal she had on green metal with Jupiter plane symbol on each piece of it. Strapped to her back was a sword as big as her body and was in a dark green sheath. She turned to look at the senshi with her eyes as cold as ice. Just to give you all a fair warning, the moment we betrayed Usagi is the moment we gave up the right to our thrones, Makoto said, and she waited for someone to speak, and luckily for everyone else because Makoto's patience was a little low, Amy spoke. What do you mean by that, Makoto-chan? She asked timidly. She never seen Makoto stare at her the way she had done and to put if simple and frighten her. It's exactly what I meant. Our titles as heirs for our respected planets had went to the next person in the royal family. For me it would be my sister Tatsuki. However, we have a chance to reclaim our title as heir if we defeat them in a fight. And I plan on training until then, because I know my sister is no pushover, she said as she walked out of the shrine to find herself a place to train without distraction. Hotaru too got to her feet, and in a flash of light her appearance also changed. She wore a black kimono with purple flowers on it with a purple sash wrapped around her waist. On her back was a double-bladed scythe. The pole was purple and the blades on it were a pitch black that reflected no light. I sense a powerful disturbance in the universe and I am going to prepare myself for the battle to come, she said as she started walking towards the door but stopped before she exited. I advise you all to train yourselves. Especially you inner senshi, since you were the ones who betrayed Usagi. Your title for the throne for your planet is on the line. Also make sure you phone Mamoru-san, because his throne is also on the line since he no longer wishes to wed with Usagi and that the Earth no longer had an alliance with the Moon due to his decision, she said as she walked away, leaving the rest confused and worried. I never thought kicking out Usagi-chan would have us give up the right to our throne, Minako said in a small voice, but then a question popped into her head. Luna, if we betrayed Usagi and our title for heir is on the line, what's going to happen to you since you agreed to her banishment from the senshi? She asked to the cat that paled at the question. I don't know, but that isn't important right now. What is important is figuring out how Makoto, Rei, and Hotaru regained their memories. The new enemy Hotaru was speaking of and why they passed out like they did, she said as she diverted the attention from her and onto other matters. I can be of some help on our new, yet old enemy, Setsuna said as she stepped forward from the back of the room. Guardians Realm Takato, Tatsuki, and Raven had all awaked an hour ago and were now once again in the briefing room. The Guardians were all talking to each other except for Raven, who was reading a book. Jiraiya had gone to find Queen Selena T an hour ago and they were all waiting patiently for his return. 15 minutes later Jiraiya arrived in the room with the Queen and two girls following them. I apologize for leaving earlier, but I had to call in two friends who came to help you out on your journey. But these girls are special, they are Usagi's and Naruto's guardians, Selena T said with small smile on her face. Naruto instantly recognizes them both because one of them was his guardian back on the Moon Kingdom. Usagi recognizes them both also, but turns to her mother with a questioning glance. Mother, why am I getting a new guardian when I already have Luna? She asked with confusion clear in her voice. Luna will no longer be your guardian, Usagi. The reason for this is because she had not only betrayed you, but had not been there to help you out in your time in need on more than one occasion. That is why I have summoned now to become your new guardian, she said, gesturing to the girl standing to her right. The girl had red shoulder-length hair with bangs almost falling over her left green eye. She was dressed in a red tank top with black pants and matching black shoes. On her head was a pair of big round white frame sunglasses with yellow lens. She gave a small smirk towards Usagi, whom just gave her a small wave. It's good to see you again now, Usagi said as she gave her a small smile. I have to say you've grown, Ujo-sama, now said as she walked slowly over to Usagi and sat in the seat next to her. Naruto, I'm sure you remember Makoto, she said as she placed her hand on Makoto's shoulder. Makoto had a very distraught look on her face. She had short spiky black hair with two braids on opposite sides of her head falling down to her shoulders. Her yellow eyes were red from crying, but held a deep determination in them. She was dressed Buddhist robes with red prayer beads around her neck. In her hand was a bronze staff shaped like a cat's head. Makoto, are you all right? Naruto asked as she walked over to him and sat in the seat next to him. Mai's gone, she spoke softly with tears forming in her eyes again, but they were refusing to fall. Takato, who heard this, instantly turned his head towards the crying cat goddess. Makoto, what happened to Wanisama? He asked in a whisper. Selena T, knowing that Makoto wouldn't be able to speak of what happened, decides to answer for her. Takato, both Mai and Shayna has been captured by the Chaos Army, she spoke sadly and the Guardian's eyes all widen in shock. Takato felt his rage building and immediately walked out the room. How did those two get captured? Weren't they two of the strongest fighters from Mars and the royal family? Tatsuki said as her eyes momentarily flashed green. I don't know about Shayna, but I know that Mai got overwhelmed by an army of heartless, B-class demons, and someone named Envy, now explained with a heavy frown on her face. They got to her when every other Odome was having a tournament halfway around the world and it was only her, Makoto and I because I didn't feel like fighting in some dumb tournament, she said rubbing her temples. Not trying to be rude or anything, but wouldn't be best if we continued with our mission in gathering the other Guardians. Then once that's done we can hope we come across them when we begin traveling to different universes, Naruto explained with his eyes closed, and when he opened them, he saw everyone in the room staring at him with a look of shock. What'd I say? He asked with uneasiness. Nothing, it's just that you actually said something smart, Naruto, Usagi said with her eyes wide. Naruto crossed his arms and glared at his sister and everybody else in the room. I can be smart if I wanted to. I just tend to have more fun than think about every little situation, he said, offended that they would think of him as an unintelligent person. Let's get back to business. Jiraiya started and paused when Takato walked back into the room, visibly more calm. As I was saying, once you gather the last two no 3 Guardians you will have to return back to Karakura and will have them changed into Shinigami like the rest of you. Once that is finished you will return to the final Guardian's dimension to be trained by her father or grandfather, don't care what you call him. Then you will travel to different dimensions for the next 4 years getting different kind of training. Along the way you may run into other people from any of the royal families, so keep your eye out for them. If you find any of them, have them immediately come to this dimension. Identifying them won't be hard now that your memories had all returned. Here all the information on the last 3 Guardians, Jiraiya said as he pulled out 3 folders from his vest. Naruto picked up one folder, Takato the second one, and Raven the last folder. This that end, thanks for watch here.